goodness. All right, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right, just testing my sound. Hey, folks, my bad. Camera wasn't trying to work right. I was like, okay, we about to just have audio, but here we are. We have some stuff to cover. I'm gonna try my best to get through all of it. I didn't get to jump into every bit, but we'll see how we can do. Let me read a few greetings and hellos, and then we'll just jump right into it, folks. All right. Let's see. What up, Avocado Queen? What up, Tari and Rain Reloaded? Good evening to the host of the chat. By the way, I would say, like, y'all be sleeping on his channel, but that whole, I know we just talked about Candace Owens, but I will say, like, a week or two ago, he was already calling out the whole rebranding or just noticing things. So go back and check out what he posted on his channel about all that, because it's like, yeah. Joe Mario, I think it's your birthday, right? Somebody's birthday is today. It's a few birthdays today. I don't remember whose I saw. I'm gonna shout you out real quick because you said it in the community note. Was that whose birthday was it? Somebody's birthday. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong person. Alejandro 8 Mario. There we go. That's your birthday. Happy birthday. What up, Gregory Jolly? Shout out to you. The Maltby. What up? If I skip you, please don't take it the wrong way. I gotta scroll through the chat, but I appreciate each and every person in the live chat. What up, Sochi 314? By the way, I apologize. I don't like coming late on the live stream, but I'd rather have my stuff prepared than just come on here and be doing anything. I'm gonna adjust this camera. I don't like how it looks. I don't like it showing my rug. All right. How does that look? Say, put your feet on my rug. All right. I'll take that. Okay. Anyway, let's see. I'm just giving people a minute to get in here while we're chatting it up. Poison Ivy said, Queen on the set is just awful. I remember hearing Miss Tina say that she used to walk around with DC members. She used to walk around with the DC members to and from the bathroom and not let them be alone. I understand that now as an adult. Yeah, it's wild. That, first of all, yeah, we're gonna have some discussion on that because that was very disturbing to watch. Very wild, very out of pocket. Just, my God. Yeah, we'll get to that one. I almost was going to give it its own separate video. Actually, I was going to do that tomorrow, but I was like, since I'm already going live, we might as well address it here. Let me see. What up, Julian Steve? What up, Anakin, not Vader? I hope I'm saying your names right. Alan, what up? What up, Kayla, Corey T, Capri Mallory, Gregory Haynes, what up? Lawrence B. All right, folks, I appreciate y'all. Let me go ahead and jump into this. What up, Eddie Lamar Davis? I'm doing well, thank you. Actually, it's been a great weekend so far. I've been able to catch up with a lot of folks I haven't seen in a long time. So, few quick announcements. Next book club session is actually this upcoming Monday, the 25th, right? 9 p.m. Eastern. We're covering chapters 5 through 11 of The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. The link is already in the community tab that I posted earlier, I think yesterday. Like I said, even if you haven't read the book, you're welcome to join us. We're just on Zoom chopping it up, talking, going through the books. If you missed segment or chapters 1 through 4, you're welcome to come and bring your 2 cents on that as well. It's just, it's all easy vibes. My only rule is just don't come on there acting crazy, right? And we don't ever really have any problems like that. So it's a good time. So that's tomorrow or Monday the 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, side note, quick story time. This will only take like a minute, I promise. It's actually a good one. Normally I'd be coming on here with something crazy that happened, but this is actually really cool. So I went out. I was at Georgia Brown's Friday night, catching up with a good old friend. And so while I'm sitting there eating and everything, out of nowhere, there's somebody that comes from behind me and they like put like a camera in my face to take a picture. And I'm like, what? And I was like, who was that? Now, I didn't think it would be like anybody from like YouTube. Like, I get it. I don't have a huge channel, but every now and then there is somebody that will notice you in public and say, hey, I follow your thing, or what up, Calvin? Cool. But I was like, I don't think anybody's crazy enough to just walk up in my face, put a camera. And so when I kind of looked to the right to see who was holding the camera, because it was about to go one or two ways. Either somebody was about to get cussed out or it was going to be somebody I know. And then it ended up being one of my childhood friends who I have not seen since high school. This cat Bobby that lived, well, if you listen to my podcast, I talk about there's a Bobby that lived next door, but there's a different Bobby once we moved that lived 4 doors down. Like the neighborhood we moved to, we only had about 5 black neighbors, but he and his family were one of them. They lived 4 doors down. Their mama used to always bring us some greens out of her garden. I haven't seen him since It has to be high school. So that's 15 plus years ago. He just happened to be in town, right? So, and the thing is, like, understand, for those who don't know me, I am from a town called Spanaway, Washington, all the way on the other side of the coastline. I currently live in DC, been here since I turned into an adult. But, you know, the rarity of two Black folks from Spanaway being in the same place, like in DC, is just, it's rare, right? So that was a pleasant surprise. That made my day. And you know, when Black folks see somebody they ain't seen in forever, they get loud. What you doing here? Hey! Like, I was so loud. Man, it was so funny. But always good to see folks you haven't seen in forever. Really, really dope. Like, I got to meet his wife and everything. So that was really cool. That made my day. Because that, when you don't even expect to just see some folks, you know how it is. And then, especially if it's somebody you haven't seen in years, or they haven't even come across your radar, because maybe y'all aren't even on social media like that, and you see them, it's like, whoa, a moment, right? So that was really, really cool. That made my day. Really, really dope. Anyway, let's I'm gonna go ahead and jump in quiet on set. By the way, for those who want to see it and have not seen it yet, I am kind of talking about some of the things that happen in it. So if you want to leave and come back in about 15 minutes, you can, because I am spoiling some of this. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and start talking. As I'm doing my intro, this is your time to click off and come back later while I give you some time to move that mouse or scroll and click out and go to somebody else's channel for a minute. So quiet on set at this point. It's this docuseries. I saw it on HBO Max, but I think it might be on another channel as well, right? And so this documentary just goes through, and it's 4 episodes. At first, I thought it was only 1. And when I got through the first one, I was like, wait, there's 3 more? Oh, Lord, okay. But so as I started watching, this is all about just a lot of the chaos that goes on behind the scenes of a lot of the kids shows that we've all watched. And I think the biggest takeaway that I got out of this, sorry, I'm putting my phone on silent so nobody interrupts us. I think that the biggest takeaway that I really got from this, which kind of made me feel bad, is that as a child or a teenager, my entertainment came at somebody else's expense, right? Came at the expense of somebody else's trauma, somebody else's hardship, and somebody else's not great experience. That was the hardest thing to kind of make peace with as I watched it. I will say a lot of the shows that are featured are more so shows that were out by the time I wasn't even watching Nickelodeon anymore. Like, because it's like 2 phases. They talk about Nickelodeon in the 90s and they talk about Nickelodeon in the 2000s. And by the 2000s, I was already kind of too old to really be locked in. So, you know, some of the shows that, you know, they had on there, you know, the reboot of All That, I don't really remember watching that. I remember watching the original All That. Hell, I remember watching the first episode of All That. But I don't quite remember watching the reboot of All That. And they talk about also the Amanda Bynes show. But that's a show I specifically remember because I remember watching the original All That and her being on that. And I remember her doing the Dear Abby letters. You know, that's me. So I remember that. I remember her getting the show because I think we moved to Europe when I was in 3rd grade. And when I got back to the United States, she had her own show, I think, by the time I was in like 6th grade, the Amanda Bynes show, the Amanda show. And then there's some other shows that are featured, some of the later ones. So like, what else? Zach and Cody. Is it Zach and Cody? I'm sorry, Drake and Josh. I never watched that. I was already done with Nickelodeon by then. Sam and Cat with Ariana Grande. What's it? Ariana Grande, right? I was already too old by then. I knew her from when she started doing music. I didn't even know she was on the show. What else? Some of the other shows that were on there, just all these shows that I really didn't watch by then. But getting to my point, it's very disturbing because you see all of these different things that are happening, and you see a lot of adults who drop the ball, right? In terms of responsibility, in terms of having that vigilance, or not vigilance, whatchamacallit, having that what do I want to say? What is the God? Help me with the word I'm trying to think of. Lord. Well, being vigilant. That's not the word either. Whatever it is. We'll say discernment today, right? The discernment that was not there, right? That is the part that gets me, because it's like there were so many signs that were right there, like right in your face, right? And it's like people did not. And as somebody who has worked with, you know, if you follow me, I ran a community center for 11 years. Like, as somebody who works with kids and then have to see that, so maybe it was vigilance. Okay. to sit and see just the lack of urgency with a lot of the adults who allowed the things to happen, it just, God, it got under my skin. And the other thing too, for the kids, right? Because they talk about it in different contexts. There's the piece about the workplace toxicity, right? Just the environment in the workplace, the sexual harassment, that kind of stuff. But then, and that's with the adults, specifically the women that were in some of the writers' rooms. But then they have the other element where these are the children and the youth that are affected by what they're affected by. And for me, I've always said it's already hard to be a child star, right? To be a child thrown in the spotlight is already an experience that is not built for everybody because it's not a normal one. It's an anomaly, right? And there are 3 points that I really got out of the experience of the child actors that were featured. Like one of their biggest challenges is the fact that they're the breadwinner of the family, right? And when they're the breadwinner of the family, they have the pressures of adult responsibility in the hands of a child, right? It may be managed by adults. It may be in the hands of the parents and all, but at the end of the day, the child is the talent. The child is the reason why the paychecks are coming in. The child is the reason why the family may uproot and move to LA or Florida or New York, wherever they go. The child is the reason why, the entire livelihood and the lifestyle of the family is going to change. And as long as that child is working, that staple of how, that staple of their life experience continues, right? When that child stops working, it affects the whole family. So that kind of pressure, right? And you even hear about one of the kids. I don't remember all the kids' names, but there was one boy, black kid, who was talking about, his goal was to get his family out the hood. He wanted his family to have an opportunity. And so he felt that he always had to really overperform, overachieve, be perfect, because he didn't want to ruin the opportunity. He wanted to make sure he could get his mom and his family into, a new environment where there was more opportunity through his eyes, right? And so the pressures of being a child actor, having to manage through that kind of space, that's not an easy experience, right? And then when you see some of the roles that some of these kids were given, there was another kid where, again, this is another black boy, and the roles that he's given, very stereotypical. They had the one where he's selling the Girl Scout cookies, but they're kind of painting it to be like he's a drug dealer. He got the cookies in the back, right? So they kind of have that going. He had to play some character called like the fetus, where they put him in like a bodysuit, which is uncomfortable to be in because everything is kind of exposed, right? He had to wear this brown bodysuit. There was another one where there was a character called like Big Nose, right? And I'm like, interesting, right? So that's kind of part one for me. It's kind of like, again, the idea of children being a breadwinner. And then for the second note that I thought about, again, is this is not a normal experience, right? The idea of fame showing up just as you're coming into your own, because a lot of these kids were brought on at 9, 10, 11 years old, right? They're coming into a space where they're just starting to get their own identity. Think about when you're a kid, you're a baby, you're in baby land, you're a toddler, your whole world is your parents, right? You're still trying to maneuver and matriculate through everything, but your entire existence is centered around your parents and your immediate family. Then you get to about 5, 6, 7 years old. You're now starting to be socialized around other kids because now you're going through the idea of routine. You're now going to school, Monday through Friday for 7 or 8 hours a day. But you're still in this space where you're kind of, everything you understand and everything you see is through the lens of the adults around you, your teachers, your parents, right? And you're starting to learn interpersonal relationships with your peers, learning how to share, learning how to, how you're going to maneuver in different spaces, learning how to stand in line for lunch versus go knock everybody down because you want to be first, like all that kind of stuff. So by the time you start getting to 8, 9, 10, 11, you're starting to slowly get your own perception of the world. You're starting to get your own understanding, right? And the older you get, you start to understand that, okay, you really see things differently from your parents, all of that, right? So just as you're going through this whole transition of life where the world is starting to develop around you. And I talk about this on one of the podcasts where I say, like, I feel like I got my just wake up call about life when I was about 10 or 11 living overseas. And then our school buses are being, bomb sniffed and police escorted every day because there were protests against the American citizens that lived on the bases because of Yugoslavia and Kosovo and what was happening with Slobodan Milosevic. So me being, 10, 11 years old and you're on the school bus and you're watching people throw eggs at the bus and death to you and death to your family and the bomb threat here. And I remember we had a basketball game at Camp Darby, which was another base closer to, it was in Livorno, Italy. That's by Pisa. And then somebody set off bombs in the trash cans, right? And you're 4th or 5th grade just playing basketball. Now everybody has to evacuate the gym. And you go through something like that and your whole world changes, right? So for these kids who, are coming into this age, they're dropped off into a predicament that's not normal. They're dropped off into instant fame, right? They're a household name. money's coming in, but at the same time, they're doing something that they enjoy. They're having fun, right? They get to be silly. They get to be singing and dancing and acting and doing all the stuff that they like to do. But again, it's not a normal experience, right? They were talking about, they got about 3 hours of schooling every day. So, you're doing a little bit of a lesson here, and then they got to run you back to set. And then you're moving. You got to promote the show. You're traveling. You're touring and everything. You might have some time away from your family. And it's not just limited to the experience of just this show, because we can talk about the Justin Timberlakes and the Britney Spears and Christinas and them talking about Mickey Mouse Club and having to leave their families and, spending all year working. And then once the Mickey Mouse Club ends, and some of them are doing Broadway, some of them are doing all these other things, and they're never even seeing their family for weeks and months at a time. It's not a normal experience. So then it leads me to my third part where, you do all that. And the challenge is with this series, it showcases how many times the kids were just swapped out for a new kid, for new talent, how they were made to be very interchangeable and, kind of just tossed out. They get introduced into this world of fame and success and opportunity and being in the spaces with celebrities and everything like that. And then next thing you know, you're not called back for season 2, or you're not called back for a third season, and you go back to your life. And now you're supposed to somehow be able to operate as a normal person, which is why I think we've seen so many child stars who come into issues where they have substance abuse problems. They have other issues that they come into. They have a lot of run-ins with the law. I think you constantly see that. And even though for these execs and for these TV directors, they're like, oh, 2 years was, it's nothing. Like 2 years to adults doesn't seem like a long time. For us, 2 years is nothing. Like we map out plans, right? As adults, when you're trying to figure out your 5-year plan or whatever, well, I'm going to give 18 months to this project, and then 6 months I'm gonna do this, and then I want to be here. But for kids, 2 years is a really long time, especially in that developmental stage. So going back to the podcast I was talking about, it's interesting how in my podcast, I had those 3 episodes about living in Italy, and I can vividly remember the details of what was happening per grade. A whole episode dedicated to everything that happened in 3rd grade, a whole episode dedicated to everything that happened in 4th, a whole one dedicated to everything that happened in 5th, and so on and so forth. But now as an adult, like the last 5 years for me is a blur, right? I'm like, what was that? That was 2021. Oh, I thought that was like it's all a blur. So understanding that these moments, these milestones, these experiences for kids, they're such checkpoints and pivot points within their life experience that, the idea of being tossed out, it does something. And we saw that where a lot of the kids talked about how, they had mental health issues or substance abuse issues or different things that affected them as adults that they're still working through today. And so it to me, it broke my heart with that aspect. And it just showed how easy it was for a lot of these kids to be manipulated. But then the worst part is it gets darker, right? That was just a piece on the kids just having to deal with nonsense on the set and the aggressions from the Dan Snyder guy, who sounds like a horrible person, right? I was pissed when I saw the bit about him being pissed off about the black girl getting the birthday cake, and he was mad about it for some reason. But then we find out about the acting coach, Brian Peck. Now, this is one of the creeps in this series, right? And you get the star Drake Bell. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't know who he was until I saw this, because again, at this point, I was too old to kind of watch these shows. Like the last kids show I paid attention to would have been That's So Raven, right? And I was already pretty much in high school by the time that came out. But right, and so with Drake Bell, I think that's his name. The saddest part, right? The father knew something wasn't right with the acting coach Brian Peck. The father was like, something ain't right about him. He's always trying to hang around the kids. He's all like, something ain't right? Something is fishy. Something in the water ain't adding up. And somehow Brian Peck was able to drive a wedge between Drake and his father. And I think that's one of the other challenges too, because Drake is a bit older. He's kind of in that teenage phase, right? Understanding that when kids get into those teenage years, that's already the rough years for the parents anyway. Any parent can tell you their child, for some reason, the child is the apple of their eye, and then they hit about 12 and a half, 13, and they just turn into the freaking devil, right? They got attitude, they talk back, they want to argue with you and everything. And it's really because they're now developing their own full identity and full sense of self. They have their own way of seeing the world. The hormones are kicking in, their body's going through the change. They're starting to want to maneuver and operate as an adult, but there's still elements that still make them do childish things, right? But this is that phase, about 12 and a half, 13 to, I want to say 17-ish. That is when it's in the house, right? And so this is when you get into that space where you have a lot of teenagers who tend to find comfort around other adults, right? Because they all think their parents are idiots. They think their parents don't know anything. And I remember being a teenager, I feel like it was my job to protect my parents from the realities of the world because they just didn't understand how the world worked. Like, that's how I was at 15, 14, 16, right? I felt like, oh God, they don't understand anything. God, what's wrong with this family, right? You think you're the smartest one in the house. And so it's easy to latch on. It's easy to get up under another adult who tells you all the things you want to hear. And that's kind of where Brian Peck comes into the conversation. He told Drake all the stuff he wanted to hear. Brian Peck is the fun guy, the cool guy, right? The life of the party. No discipline. Let's just do whatever you want. Meanwhile, Brian is a whole freaking pedophile, right? And had goals to do what it is that he wanted to do. But anyway, he ends up driving a wedge between Drake Bell and the father, right? Because the parents were separated. So Drake ends up moving in with the mom, right? He tells the dad, I don't want to live with you. I want to live with the mom. And the dad is kind of pushed out. And the dad specifically told the mom, right? No matter what happens, no matter what you do not leave him alone with Brian Peck. Do not let Brian Peck get into any kind of compromising spaces where it's the two of them alone. Like, make sure you keep an eye on him, because the father had been calling it out. He had been bringing it up at the studio. Hey, this dude is doing a lot. He's kind of weird. And they kind of gaslit him and tried to paint him out to just be, oh, you're a terrible person. How could you say that about Brian? Blah, 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 and everything else like that. And then they highlighted the fact, well, Brian is attracted to the same sex. So maybe that's what it is. Is it your ignorance against people who are attracted to the same sex? Like, kind of gaslighting him in that realm. And so the dad is like, well, maybe okay, so boom. And then you find out that Brian Peck has been sexually assaulting this kid for years, right? Because the mom allowed the man to spend him to spend the night at the man's house. They were doing trips and flying to Disney World and going here and going there. And it became this very manipulative series of events where you start to see there's trip after trip, right? You start to see Drake is getting these just phone calls drastically, where if Drake doesn't answer the phone, Brian is calling and almost yelling at him like, why didn't you answer? Which to me, that's the sign right there. Like, you're just the acting coach, right? And at this point, Drake Bell is this massive superstar. Like, at this point, if I go to the studio and say, I don't want you here, they'll probably get rid of you because I carry that much weight. But at this point, Drake is not in that headspace. But fortunately, Drake has this girlfriend and the mom realizes something is off. And then that's when everything starts to come out, right? And now here come the police, and the charges. But it's so frustrating because it was crazy how they were able to psychologically manipulate this kid, how they could get in his head, right? Where he didn't want to talk about it. Because also the other element too, and I hate that this is such a heavy conversation, and I hate that this is our first topic, but even when you're talking sexual assault, right? Statutory rape, all those different kind of things too, especially when you're talking with teenagers, let alone boys that are victims by other men. A lot of them are not going to want to talk about that because it jumps into the conversation of masculinity. It jumps into the conversation of people are not going to have the same empathy for a Drake Bell that they're going to have for a young girl who's a victim of the same thing, right? Because we still live in a space where a lot of people have very ignorant viewpoints on a lot of things, especially when it comes to sexuality. And so for him, that guilt of not being in a space where he can even say, this is what's happening to me, because there's that element of shame that comes in. That's the sad part for me with all of it. And then the worst part, it goes to trial, and you got all these people that are in the court in support of Brian Peck. I mean, that whole Brian Peck side was packed. Okay, like the VIP, everybody got going through the velvet rope and going in there and got badges, and it's like what? And when they started talking about all these celebrities that wrote letters in support, I said, that's crazy. That is crazy. Now, that's crazy. And the worst part, some of the people hadn't even been around any of that, hadn't been on the sets. These are just some of Brian's people that he knows from around the way. And I've always said, you really don't know people. I say that even the people that you may be the closest to, sometimes you know nothing about them, right? Every now and then there's somebody in your life and you find out something so horrible about them. And you're like, how the heck? Which is kind of why, like, when it comes to doing like letters of support and stuff, I'm like, folks need to be really wary about what it is they get behind. And when it's those kind of accusations, it's like, you really need to move with a sense of consciousness behind, or cautiousness in regard to what you jump behind. And so a lot of people wrote all these letters of support in regard to what was happening. And this is after he's been convicted. It's not even while the allegations, this is after the conviction. This is after the proof is there. This is after they've gotten this man on tape, like audio, confessing to what he's done, explaining why he's done what he's done. And people are still writing letters. And really, I think there's a lot of people who weren't even, they just showed up when it was time for the sentencing, weren't even there for the trial, and just started moving on cold. And yeah, well, we support blah, 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 blah. That part for me, I was like, I want to fight everybody. And then I think the saddest part with Drake Bell is, again, that cycle continues, because from what I've read, he's also kind of gotten into trouble with a bunch of different things as well. I'm like, see how sometimes there's unfortunately patterns that take place. And then we saw Amanda Bynes, and that's also not to say that when somebody is a victim, they're automatically going to go and do that to someone else. That's not what I'm saying. But there are some elements where there are people who fall into that same space, right? We had that conversation about R. Kelly years ago, where, you know, him being the victim of that within his own family, you can only help but wonder if that contributed to the decisions he would make as an adult in regard to how he interacted with other people's kids, right? And so then we get to Amanda Bynes, which, you know, she's technically not in the documentary herself, but they talk about her a lot and just talk about just the weird things that went on. And you can't help but wonder if that contributes to why she's in the headspace she's in now. And I totally forgot just how massive she used to be when I was a kid. And some of that might be because I was overseas for some of it, but I totally forgot that she was a huge commodity at one point. So to see, you know, her go from this just massive wave of success to battling a lot of mental health issues and different bouts with, you know, jail and everything else. And I think she's been diagnosed as bipolar 2. I could be wrong. Somebody can correct me on that. It's just like, man, right? And so there's just so many things in there. And then with the Dan Snyder guy, again, the uncomfortable working environment, making people randomly give him massages and stuff. And I'm like, y'all have just allowed a culture to take place in this space where all of this is normalized and nobody's calling any of this out. Like, absolutely not. I don't care if he's the showrunner, right? Some of that stuff is like, there's too many adults in the room to just let all this slide. So even when I saw the bit with the two women that were the writers and how they had to split a paycheck and they already weren't making any money, I said, that is wild. Absolutely wild, right? Just crazy. And then when you start looking at the content, because again, at this point, a lot of what was highlighted, I already was too old. I wasn't watching Nickelodeon anymore, but some of the jokes are so awkward. So the pickle boy thing, and a lot of the scenes where there's water or liquids being like splattered on people's faces and random moans and stuff. I said, what the hell? Okay. Creepy, right? Very, very strange. Very, very strange. And then the worst part is then they talk about there's been 3, you know, adults that were, you know, pretty much, what's the word I want to use? Predators. We'll use predators. There were 3 adults that were predators working within the company. And then some of them got rehired. That was the part that I couldn't understand. I think one of them got rehired to work on Drake and Josh. I'm just like, are you effing serious? Absolutely wild. It's a very intense watch. I will say it's a lot. It just kind of goes to show, like, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And mind you, those are just the people that spoke up. Do you know how many child actors there are that probably went through the same thing and they took that to the grave, or they're going to take it to the grave? It's because it's not an easy thing to just come out and share, because you're sharing something about an experience you had that makes you so vulnerable to the point where you're at the mercy of how the world perceives what it is you put out there. Because understand, the world does not always move with grace toward the victims. There are some victims who are victim shamed, and people try to, because even the 2 boys' mom, the mom that made her statements the other day in defense of Dan Snyder, and she has the 2 sons. One son was Corey on That's So Raven. I don't know what the other son was on, but you know, she made her whole thing about what ain't happening with my kids. Where were the parents? And it's kind of like, that's the issue. I think we get into a space where people center themselves in everything and make issues that are actually more so about a culture of a business, or even systemically how that business is run. They make it about their experience, right? They use their own personal anecdote, and that's the justification as to why everybody else is tripping, because it ain't happened to me, so y'all tripping and everything else like that. I hated that their mom made that statement. I was like, come on, lady, be for real. But again, when we think about how many youth there are that are victims to that don't speak out, and hell, even adults, right? But again, putting yourself out there with that kind of experience and how people move. Think back to Razby from B2K when he made the allegations against Chris Stokes, especially back then, right? That was about, what, 07 maybe? Or maybe 08? There was no sympathy for Razby. There was no, oh my God, we gotta, you know, cancel Chris Stokes. We need to protest and sign petitions and boycott anything else he doesn't know. What did everybody do? They made fun of him, right? They started lighting him up, right? I remember when him and Chris Brown had some random Twitter beef, and then what did Chris Brown start saying? You liked it, didn't you? Right? So just understand, like, when people bring out and share these things, it's not always an easy step for folks, right? And unfortunately, because the world is a terrible place, there's not always the guarantee of grace for victims, right? It's easy to shame the victims all the time. It's easy to kind of paint them and say, well, the idea of painting, well, there's something you could have did differently, right? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you tell somebody? Why didn't you say stuff? Like, just, it's a lot. Anyway, I'm going to pause because that was really heavy. I hate that we had to open with that, but let us go to the chat here. Oh, y'all, I don't know if we'll get through all these. We'll do what we can do here. All right. What up, Harold? Elizabeth Frank, where are the lawsuits for Nickelodeon? And I do wonder if there have been some that are just under the radar. You know, sometimes there's some stuff that they keep like under wraps, and sometimes there's settlements and stuff paid in adjudication before it even makes it to trial. So who knows? But yeah, me as a parent, I would have been suing. Oh, if I was that father, I would have had a good check. I'm sorry. Y'all are gonna be done. That network would have been Calvalodian by the time I was done. All right, man. Jesus. All right. Karen Sherman said, I don't know who everybody is. So surprised about these kid stars being, abused. That's been going on forever. Like, I mean, generationally too. Please understand, it is not starting and stopping with Nickelodeon. I'm sure there's some Disney stories. I'm sure there's stories on the major networks. It's in the music industry. Any space where you have youth, there's always going to be some creeps around, right? Even in the schools, community work, unfortunately, there's always them creeps. So, yeah, man, crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, when I read up on what happened on the set of The Wizard of Oz and how that girl pretty much almost died during the movie, I said, yeah, that's wild. Absolutely wild. Tyler Hackner, so many suggestive jokes being allowed to air for children. And I was thinking about that too, because I'm like, is this for kids or for adults? Because a lot of the jokes are such, only adults who catch it, because kids are not even thinking in that way on a lot of those jokes, right? So I'm like, some of these folks are living vicariously through this content, and it's very disturbing, right? I'm gonna kind of bypass through this topic just because I feel like I gave people 15 minutes to come back, and it's been way over 15. Let me see. They're talking about the dad. Alan said, shout out to the black mom that got her son out of that studio. She protected him. Yeah, like that mom wasn't playing, right? And I felt bad for her because she talked about how she didn't want to feel like she ruined it for her son, right? Because that was his dream. But as a parent, sometimes you got to step in when some stuff ain't adding up. And mom said, this ain't adding up. Absolutely not. We out of here. Like, man, crazy. Ridiculous. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Let me get a sip of this tea that I made real quick. This one is peach lavender. All right, I swear, a mess. All right, shifting gears. Kyle Rittenhouse. All right, so if you remember, Kyle Rittenhouse, he is the one time YouTube yanked one of my videos down. That video got to stay up for literally 20 minutes, and YouTube said, oh, absolutely not, because I lit in the Kyle Rittenhouse so bad, and they got me out of there. But long story short, Kyle Rittenhouse somehow was invited to the University of Memphis, right, to do a speaking engagement, and it didn't go so well, to the point where he ended up having to leave early because, the students just pretty much gave him hell on earth. They gave him challenging questions. They were booing. They weren't having it. Him and his team, he got pissed off. He stormed out. He tried to recreate the narrative and say, oh, I came to, speak about freedom and celebrate patriots, and I was attacked and blah, 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 blah for my safety. Some nonsense. But anyway, getting to my point. And the videos are on social media. But for me, it's interesting to see who it is that people choose to continue to platform, right? And why. Because I've always said, like, Kyle Rittenhouse will never get any sympathy from me. And because for me, like I've said before, he, in my opinion, is like the face of what you call white violence, right? The era of white rage that we live in, where people feel some kind of way about any and everything that doesn't center around whiteness, where they go and commit acts of violence, right? And so even when you think about him getting off, and then he gets paraded at the Trump rallies and whatever other rallies, and I mean, they bring it out like it's WWE events and pyrotechnics and standing ovations. And I said, I see what this is rooted in. Interesting. But going to my point, for me, like with Kyle, like I said, he's the face of violence, right? He's that kind of person that goes and starts trouble, but then plays victim, right? You literally watch this guy go from a different state, go from Illinois into Wisconsin, right, to go and pretty much start some trouble at a protest and make the claim that he was going there to protect businesses. I'm like, in Kenosha, I'm like, this has nothing to do with you, because one, that's what the police are already there for. Secondly, again, that narrative of painting the idea of being the vigilante, being the hero, the American patriot, going to protect the rights of the people, just up there in line. But anyway, you go there with an AR-15, you go and kill 2 people, right? You go there looking for trouble. The trouble comes, and then you kind of retreat. And how do you retreat? You retreat into murder. You go and you kill 2 people. Crazy, right? And then for me, it's kind of like, he does all this under the guise of being a hero, and just understand how all this is coded, right? This is all still centered in anti-blackness, because what were they protesting for in Kenosha, right? Another victim of police brutality, right? And at that point, the narrative of protest in regard to police brutality is always centered around the idea of these are troublemakers that are trying to defend a criminal. These are troublemakers that are going to go and burn down the town and blah, 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 blah. And what is so interesting, when we think back to 2020 and what we saw in Minneapolis, where we saw the police station that was burned down, where we saw a lot of the businesses that were looted, and then it was concluded that that was not even the people that were there for the protest. There were different agents of chaos and different groups that pretty much went out there to go and start stuff. So the people that were charged with the burning of the police station were not any of the protesters that were there for, the actual protest in Minneapolis. When you saw the attack on CNN on live TV where they were throwing the fireworks and stuff, those people were agitators. They weren't even people that were there specifically protesting what they were protesting. But the blame and the imaging and the violence all gets put on Black America, Black protesters, right? And that kind of even stems from just what you've seen in the past, whether you talk about the Liberty City riots, whether you talk about the LA riots, just all these different moments where, yes, let's paint that image of Black aggression, in the hands of white innocence, right? Black aggression, we must do something to protect, right? And so he goes out there and he does all that, right? And so again, him responding to coded language, the coded language of you have to fight, conversations of civil war, because every day I see some post civil war. If this election doesn't go well, we want civil war. I'm like, who are y'all fighting? We going to work. We're minding our business. Whoever y'all got beef with, that's amongst y'all. Where is this war happening? Are y'all about to meet at like Walmart in the parking lot and just pull out your daggers and go for it? How does this work? Because I'm not a part of this. I'm minding my business. Whatever y'all got beef with, y'all take it up amongst each other and yourself. This random civil war that y'all keep wanting to jump into, I'm so confused, because then, okay, you have this war. Let's say you win. What happens next? Who's running things? Because even when I think back to January 6th, if you were able to capture the Capitol, let's say you were able to capture who was going to be running this? What were y'all going to be doing next? Because y'all didn't have a plan. It wasn't like you had a whole list of policy ready to implement. And y'all would have started fighting and killing each other over who was in charge. Y'all would have started fighting and killing each other over what was going to be for lunch. Because now you got to figure out how you're going to get food up in there, right? Just a hot mess. Anyway, sticking to my point, right? So then he, again, somebody that plays in that same role where they know they can be an agitator, be an aggressor, go and start trouble, but then they can crawl back into the space of being a victim and getting that sympathy card when they paint the idea of, oh, I was afraid for my life. So what happens? We watch this trial. And of course, here comes the tears. Where first of all, this was the strangest cry I've ever seen, right? Because he starts telling his story. I'm like, what kind of crying is that? I ain't seen that one before. And I'm somebody that work with kids. Kids got every kind of cry in the world. You got the kid that's going to just stand and just scream to the top of their lungs for no reason. You got the kid that's going to kick and tear up the room. You got the kid who's going to run away as they cry. You got the kid who's going to lay on the back and kick their legs up. You got the kid who has the quiet cry. You got the kid who can't breathe and they do and they're trying to explain to you what so they have every kind of cry in the world, but I ain't ever seen somebody who just turns into a puffer. I'm like, what the hell? Acting. And then he did all that with no tears. There was one tear that came like right here, and it wasn't a tear. That was him just straining his eyes. His eyelids got tired. His eyes started getting red, and that one tear kind of tried to fall, and it stopped right here. It wasn't enough to be a real tear to go all the way down. And I said, everybody was like, yeah, he about to get off. And what happened? He got off, right? So then it goes back to my question, where it becomes like, now that you've gotten off and they're parading you around to be a hero, and again, going back to this idea of doing speeches at school, what are you there for? What is the speech about? You're not an intellectual. You don't specialize in anything but murder. So unless you want to talk about how to get off, but like, I'm confused at what the invite was for. And I will say this, I get it. It's a college campus. Folks can invite folks to whatever they want for whatever they want. That's the purpose of college campuses. The idea of, inspiring people to look outside the box. That's really the college environment. No matter what campus you go to, you're going to get all kinds of viewpoints and, you know, ways of looking at the world. But for me, I'm like, I don't get what the invite was for and what he would have been there to do. So then his response, you know, oh, this was a setup for the university. There were thousands of patriots who were there to see me. And I'm like, the clips I saw showed about 60 people in a room. I didn't see no thousands of patriots, nothing. And understand, even patriots is coded language at this point. Coded, and really, I'm gonna stop saying coded language, because at this point, a lot of the stuff is just in our face. They know exactly what they mean. And I've always said, a lot of people hide behind the idea of either behind the idea of religion or patriotism through racism. They will be the most racist, nasty, terrible people and hide behind the guise of religion or hide behind the guise of patriotism, right? So you notice with all the cuckoo folks who continue to spew the nonsense about civil war or whatever, it's always about the patriots, right? The patriots. So you got Orange Man talking about the January 6 hostages and the patriots. And I said, oh, it was patriotic when they was any other time y'all are Blue Lives Matter, but now we got police dying and now y'all story didn't change, huh? All right, interesting. And really, it's interesting because if you watch the clip, nobody's attacking him. Nobody's trying to rush him on the stage. He just couldn't answer any of the questions because there were other students that showed up who had opposing viewpoints and gave him challenging questions. He didn't have the range for the conversation. He couldn't entertain a conversation about what was hate speech, right? Because people were calling him out, like, the people you're running behind, this is what they think. The people you're running behind, this is how they move. Do you agree with the same thing, right? They start talking about the racism, and he's trying to say, well, I can't speak. I have nothing to say on that. I'm not speaking. Oh, that's, you know, dismissing it all. So when they start booing, what happens? He leaves. And for some reason, he had a dog there. So he took the dog out. I said, damn, even the dog racist. Ah, Lord, right? And it's so interesting because, you know, his response, and people who are big supporters of Kyle Rittenhouse for obvious reasons, because I'm like, okay, so I still want to know what the support is rooted in. Is it because he went and killed people who were, you know, protesting against police brutality? And I've always said, again, for a lot of people in the racist demographic of America, in that white America collective, they see the police as an extension of themselves. So when you do have a critique of a policing system, because a lot of people in the United States, specifically white America, center themselves in everything, they center themselves in structural conversations and make it about their individual experience. So when people do call out a policing system that is unjust, they center it on themselves, even if they are not the police, right? Because an attack on the police is an attack on whiteness in this country. So I always just question, well, okay, y'all are parading Kyle around. Somebody make it make sense for me. That's all I'm saying, right? And for the people, because I sometimes get comments where they're like, well, every officer is not a bad officer. I totally agree. I think there are some people who go into the police force and they have this super clean record and they're all about the community this and community that. But the conversation is about the fact that the system that they work in allows a space where there are other people who can do any and everything under the sun and not be held accountable, and where it's justified, right? So going back to the free speech thing. So he starts talking about this, you know, well, attack on free speech. And I said, well, where were you when they passed a law in Florida that said they can now drive over, you know, and run over protesters in Florida? Because to me, that's an attack on free speech. That's when I should have saw you at the rally. I should have seen Kyle and some of these other free speech disciples that only want to talk about free speech when they're criticized for saying racist things or endorsing some nonsense. I would have thought I would have saw all of them in Florida saying, how dare you come up with laws that strip down the rights of protesters, because that's free speech right there. You know, the idea of running over protesters, you would think they would come out in droves to protect the freedom of speech in this country. But again, folks like to play in our face. I'm going to pause for a second, but I'm not done with this free speech thing because I'm shifting right to Elon Musk. Anyway, let me read some comments here. Make it make sense. You say, oof, 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 oof. Are you drowning? Are you drowning? Right? I don't see no water in the courtroom. Right? You ain't even have a glass of water on the stand. You out here drowning. Okay. Let me see. Somebody said, do I believe Orlando Brown? Well, he said a lot of things. I think something has happened to him, but I also think it's affected him mentally. So I don't really know what to kind of decipher as valid in when he's having an episode. But I do think something did happen to him at some point. Mind you, understand Orlando Brown's been on TV at least since Family Matters, right? Remember, he was Richie's friend years ago. So who knows? Let me see. Exactly. Chris Stokes over here thriving on Tubi. Y'all watching all the movies. Make it make sense. Listen here, Pepster Genie, you and I, we here. Thing is, he thought he was going there to kill some black folks. Honestly, that's exactly what I looked at it as, and ended up killing and shooting 2 white guys, right? That's exactly how I saw it. And even then, even if it wasn't about him specifically wanting to target a specific group by race, understand that through the lens of a lot of the people who are on the other side of that argument, for them, anybody who joins that movement is now what you call the traitor, right? Anybody who gets behind the police brutality protests and everything like that, they're seen as a disgrace. You know, they're seen as, you know, people who are, you know, the race traitor, they going against the grain, blah, 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 blah. So it's even like, I know in the last time we talked about the girl who got in the fight at school with the other girl. It was a black girl and a white girl. White girl had allegedly, from what I read, had jumped the black girl some days earlier. The black girl came back and beat her up, hit her head on the concrete, and she's, I think, still unconscious, right? And it was interesting watching the narrative shift as soon as they discovered the white girl had a black boyfriend. A lot of those same people who were going after black girls shifted and like, oh, well, that's what she gets. She was a race traitor. People are crazy. Understand there is a demographic of America that's just hateful. They hate everybody and everything except themselves, right? So it's just interesting to see how that moves. Let me see. Nerd Lard said white rage is not logical. It's not logical. It's all about entitlement. The world is changing around them and they don't like that the status quo is being challenged. So somebody has to suffer. And I'm going to get to that a little bit later when I get to the DEI conversations. Let me see here. It all comes out in the end. I keep asking the question, what the heck is the Civil War going to look like? I don't know, because I'm like, who are y'all fighting? Because half of y'all, a lot of these folks are going to have to fight their own family members. It's y'all that are having the discussions where y'all got to have Thanksgiving and can't talk politics because the uncle and the auntie are going to piss off everybody. So you're going to be fighting your own family. So y'all go ahead and have y'all Civil War. Let us know when y'all done. The rest of us got stuff to do. The rest of us got kids to raise, school to finish at, jobs to go to, families to raise, plants to grow, pets to watch. Ain't nobody thinking about your rage and what you're pissed off at. You don't even know what you're fighting for. You're just mad and can't figure out how to channel your energy. But whatever. Civil War. Get out of here. Every time I look at January 6th and I watch some people struggle to climb that wall when the stairs were right there. And the guy that fell probably about 20 feet back into the bushes. I know his back is still jacked up right now. And somehow it's my fault, according to him. Anyway. Terrain said that poor dog. Look. And then for Rittenhouse to win his lawsuit, right? Remember he had that big old lawsuit and won. They gave him all, I think he won, right? Got a nice check. I said, imagine that, right? You see how things work? Okay, I'm going to pause and keep going. So going right back to this conversation of freedom of speech, because you got a whole lot of folks who, in my opinion, they only pull the freedom of speech card when they want to justify their racist viewpoints, when they want to justify their horrible takes on different world events or different systems or circumstances that exist within society, right? They always bring the freedom of speech argument because a lot of people disagree with them and they don't like the smoke that they're getting. So then they try to shift the narrative and paint themselves to be a victim, even though they just had the most terrible take on everything, right? So it was interesting. You remember I talked about it on the Candace Owens video, but Don Lemon at one point almost had a show on X, which for me, I was like, Don, you should have known not to work with Elon to begin with. In my opinion, I'm sorry, Elon is not a good person. I don't care how much money he has. I'll get to that in a second. But, to me, Elon represents, for me, the face of ego and mediocrity with resources. There's a lot of people who come into wealth and they feel that their wealth gives them justification to be terrible people and justification to continue to move and operate as the standard of everything. And I've said that before, especially in the conversation of whiteness. I've already said there's a lot of people who see themselves as the standard of operation, the standard of intelligence, the standard of everything. Elon is one of them. And so when people see themselves as the standard, they can never be challenged. They don't want to challenge themselves. They're fine being comfortable in their space. And so when people come into that space and challenge them to try to think outside of the box or try to evolve with where the world is, where time is, they shut down. They can't handle it. So I did not take the time to watch the full Elon and Don interview because I was like, I'm good on that. But I've seen enough clips on social media, and it was interesting because he was fighting for his life in that interview, getting emotional, getting pissed off. But one piece that I couldn't get past is when Don started talking about just the conversation of racism and how Elon was like, well, it's time to move on from it. I said, that is really rich coming from you, Elon. Where do I start? Because one, it's always interesting that people who benefit from the most from a system that has disenfranchised an entire collective of people for generations to the point where there has been generational wealth accumulated as well as generational wealth lost from those on the receiving end, right? Those who benefited from hundreds of years of a system that built entire economies, right? That built entire industries. Understand when we're talking slavery, understand a lot of these big corporations that are in business today, they got their seed money from slavery. A lot of the university systems that are so, that are held to such high standards and prestige, their seed money came from slavery. Universities that, were about to shut down, the money that saved them came from slave money, Georgetown, right? It's just like the nerve, right? So then what's interesting is the people who benefit, and then Elon being a white South African of all people, like South Africa just now getting their stuff together. Apartheid wasn't that long ago. That's barely 30 years ago, right? South Africa is still recovering from all that, right? And they're going to be for a long time, right? And so it's kind of like, not only are you coming from a space where you benefited from a different system of racism in another country, you get super wealthy off of the exploitation and everything that your family is rooted in, right? You come over to the United States and then you come and start doing the exact same thing, right? And so it's always funny when you see people who have benefited from the systems of racism trying to tell everybody it's time to move on. Of course you want to move on because you're tired of talking about it because you're not on the receiving end of it. You've already got your wealth. So of course you can sleep good at night because you have everything you've ever wanted. But at the same time, what I've noticed is a lot of these people who are super wealthy, right? The issue that they run into is that they still want validation from people, no matter how much money you have. We as human beings still like to feel that we're liked. We still like to feel that people value us. We still like to feel that we contribute something to society, even if it's not something tangible. We still like to have a reason to feel that we're on this planet for a reason. So understand that even with Elon, for all that trash he talks, he's sensitive as hell, right? He wants to be liked, right? And so it's just interesting that he would break his neck to say, well, you need to move on from racism, but he will not challenge himself to even look into the conversation of how racism works. Because again, he's one of those people who is complacent in his own space of mediocrity and ego. So his understanding of racism is all feelings. And that's really the experience for a lot of people who always want to shut down the racism conversations, center it on just feelings. When in reality, at this point, especially in this era of information, the conversation is centered on structural systems. The conversation is centered about the experience on a macro scale, not your individual experience, not how you personally feel. So the idea of saying moving on from it, how can we move on from it? Even your very platform, which is now X, you allow for certain things to take place that go unchecked, right? A hot mess. Right. And that's kind of one of the things I hate, because I'm telling you this right now, let this come back to this video in about 20 days. There's going to be tons of people in the comments talking about you're just jealous because you don't have what he has. And it goes back to what I was saying, where a lot of times people place wealth, right? They allow wealth to be interchangeable with integrity and interchangeable with the idea of just being an all-around person that is balanced and nuanced with how they move, right? So people will equate wealth or they feel like you can exchange it out. So as long as you're making money, you can do what you want. Well, he's making money, you're just jealous, right? I remember one of these videos when I called out Steve Harvey, a lot of the people were like, you're saying all that, but look at where he's at, look at where you're at. I'm like, that's one element of a conversation, but the conversation, we're talking integrity right now. That's what I'm centered on, right? And so again, for a lot of people, the love of wealth, the worshiping of wealth allows for the lapse of integrity. And I think with Elon, that's where he's at. And that's why you have so many people who worship this man, right? One of the most interesting things I think of is when he took over Twitter. And you remember, you see the clip of him coming in with the big toilet bowl, or no, he came in with the big sink, let that sink in. And a lot of the people on the staff in there are like applauding him. Yeah, because they think he's the coolest man in the world. Because, yeah, Tesla. And, yeah, he got a rocket that blows up every week when they keep trying to send it up into space. And, yeah, awesome. So, yeah. And because everybody was like, oh, we want what he has. We want to be like him. We can learn from him. Like, understand, they had this man doing TED Talks and panel discussions. And I'm like, this man is not intelligent. He just came into money because what he comes from. He knows how to make businesses work. But the things that y'all want to size him up for. He's not the inventor of Tesla. He's not the one making the cars. He's not the one making the rockets and engine. He's not doing any of that. He's the face of it. But anyway, you watch all these people run behind him, and then as soon as he got to Twitter, he laid off everybody, right? Folks were getting cut left and right, right? Interesting. But like I said, it's interesting. So then you watch him go and purchase Twitter. And what was his reasoning? He said it was because of freedom of speech. Freedom of speech was under attack on Twitter. I said, really? Then why is it that every time there's a journalist that has something about you that they post that they don't like, you ban them from the app? We're so freedom of speech, but it's interesting that people that keep calling out certain things keep getting banned from the app. So it's kind of like nonsense. And again, that idea of when people want to feel that they are valued by society, when they want to feel validated by the masses, understand that when they don't get that validation, then they decide to jump into this punitive space. Now they're going to push their weight, their money, their ego. So what does he do? He buys Twitter, right? You literally buy, because at this point, I consider Twitter to be a public utility, even though it's privately owned. At this point, it's a public utility because so many people, millions of people use it, right? I would say YouTube falls into that space. I would say Facebook falls into that space. TikTok falls into that space. Instagram falls into that space, right? Even though these are privately owned at this point, because they're so massive and used by so many, they become a utility of the public, right? Even though they're privately owned. But you watch him purposely buy it and try to craft it into something that fits his ego at the expense of all the users, right? But you want to sit here and talk about freedom of speech, right? And so it's interesting that people who have that kind of ego are always intrusive with what they want to do. You know, rather than finding something else to get into, let me jump into the one thing that everybody uses. And I'm going to regulate and set it up to work how I want it to work so I can be comfortable and I can platform myself. I can set it up where when I make my post, they're always going to fall into the algorithm, right? Because I understand Elon been banning, the way that man be banning everybody off that app like crazy. But again, I think the challenge when you have people like that who have no sense of self-awareness, right? You know, they just, everything, their ego drives how they move, which kind of leads us into the conversation of DEI. But I'm going to pause for 1 second before I get into it, right? So yeah, it's freedom of speech. So when you talk about Kyle Rittenhouse and yeah, I had this event and I was, you know, it was for the Patriots and freedom of speech, it was attacked. No, it wasn't. The freedom of speech, in the same way freedom of speech works on one end, it works on the other. You have something to say. There are people who don't like it. They show up and they're going to tell you what they think. That's not an attack on your freedom of speech. An attack on your freedom of speech means you're being incarcerated for your beliefs. That's not an issue that you've ever had to experience. You even got to kill somebody, 2 people, and you're free. And you get to have the dog that you drag everywhere. So please, same with Elon. You want to sit here and talk freedom of speech. You're the richest person in the freaking world. You can literally create the world you want to live in, but you want to sit here and pretend that, you know, because you're tired of getting cooked on a certain social media app, it's about the freedom of speech of everybody. I must go and protect their freedom of speech. You are not here for the people cut the crap. We see through the nonsense. I need people to stop worshiping these super wealthy folks. Like, nonsense. Thank you. Victory begins in the, it doesn't have your full name on here. Somebody said his personal growth will always be frozen in his 70-year-old self. I want to say that's about Kyle. I'm not sure if that's Kyle or one of the Disney folks just because it's so far up in the chat, but I hear you. What up, Busy Blue? Y'all subscribe to his channel too, especially if you like Big Brother. He does really good reviews. That's one of my Howard friends. Busy Blue, thank you. What up? We still waiting on the wedding announcement, sir. He's engaged. He ain't sent nobody no wedding invitation though. See how folks be trifling? That's all right. I even sent them a playlist for the reception, because that's what friends are for. All right. Anyway. Let's see what we got on here. Karen Sherman said, too funny, because right before tuning in tonight, I was watching Make It Make Sense, and you keep giving old dude free plugs. That's my line. Yeah, make it make sense. I love saying that. KO said, let them annihilate each other. Yeah, look, all you Civil War disciples, I say, you know, I set the location in some rural place in Wyoming. That way you don't got to worry about other people being collateral, and y'all just go for it. Go into the mountains of Colorado, and that'll be a test of strength. Or not Colorado, Wyoming. That'll be a test of strength, because, you know, the higher you get, the thinner the air. So, you know, really the real warriors and the strong ones, right? This is a test of your strength. So I say you guys go out to the Rockies in Wyoming, go up about 10 or 15,000 feet, and you have the Civil War there. Right? That's a test of the real strength, right? That's a test of the strongest of the strongest. So all y'all set up shop there, and y'all let us know when y'all finished. Okay? All right? Anyway. Avocado Queen said, don't forget letting them use Pelosi's office as the personal bathroom. That was the other thing with January 6th. It was like, they weren't even centered in what they were doing. It's like some folks are like, you had some who were literally there, like, for real, we're going and we're taking over the government and we're going to implement a new government. And so you had some that were there for that. You had some folks who just followed the crowd in there. You had some folks who were just mad and they were just going to do anything. So they're pooping on the walls and pissing everywhere and just nasty, gross, crazy, right? Lunatics. Make it make sense. That's the wildest day, I swear. When I tell you I will never shut up about that day, I'm going to bring it up every time. Because y'all have painted black folks to be the face of violence and unruliness and everything else for the longest. And then I watch people on national TV go and storm a federal building, right? Brought nooses out. Get out of here. Get out of here. All right. Hey, Bibby said, so people want to pretend that this is real life Iron Man. His family benefited from apartheid, right? Yeah, that's where the seed money is from. That's why I'm like, you all want to talk about we need to move on. It's always the folks who benefited from it that want to move on. You know what I mean? It's like you burn your neighbor's house down, right? Like you burn your neighbor's house down, or I take it back. You burn down all your neighbor's houses. You just kept yours, right? All your neighbors are homeless, trying to struggle and everything else like that. And you become very powerful because you're the only person that has any kind of resources to, like, as far as access to water and stuff. You know, y'all can use my hose to bathe in the backyard, but that's as far as you're coming into the house. And then everybody's like, yeah, but we wouldn't have to bathe with your hose if you didn't burn our house down. It's like, no, we need to move on from that. That was last week, okay? The houses aren't even smoldering anymore. The ash is there, but the smoke is gone. You guys can easily rebuild if you want to. You guys are sitting there being victims. And you know what? If you knew I was burning down a few houses, you should have done something to stop me from burning the other ones. As a matter of fact, now I'm cutting the wall. Y'all done pissed me off. Let me cut this wall off. Y'all ain't getting it. God dang it. Done. Piss me off. Now what? Move on, right? The hot freaking mess. All right. Back in the day, somebody said Georgetown. Yeah, and it's not even just Georgetown, but yeah, Georgetown back in the day ran into an issue where they were low on money, right? And one of the saving graces for the university was selling off some of the enslaved people that were on the campus that, you know, worked the campus. So yeah, there's a lot of slave money in these universities, right? It's in a lot of these companies. Understand, and even when we talk about convict leasing, right? And the money and the wealth that was able to be created for a lot of the companies that got their start in the 1718, early 1900s that are now these big corporations today worth, you know, billions and billions. A lot of that comes from the oppression of other groups of people. So yeah. Somebody said, yes, Elon craves validation. It's obvious because he's sensitive. He can't stand for somebody to say something about him. I mean, to the point where he shuts things down. Like, I can imagine if he had a YouTube channel, the way he would be blocking every single person that left a comment. Oh yeah, well, Trump falls in that same conversation too. Now that he's in that same boat. Joe said Twitter ain't nothing but a bird poop app. Now it pisses me off because Twitter. I love me some Twitter. I still be on it, but yeah, Twitter's a headache now. You know, it's like he's fired so many of the engineers and the people that manage the framing of the site that there's just so many problems with it now. Like, you know what I mean? Like the search option is different. You can't search URLs anymore, and I think that's because of, you know, them wanting to kind of cut access to different articles and stuff like that. When people post, because he has that new program with the blue check marks, where you got the blue check and you have enough interaction, you can get revenue. Now, every time you have a post, right, you make a post that somebody has a post that's viral, all of the blue check brigade all are under the post trying to get their post to get interaction too. And most of the time, their post has nothing to do with the original one. That has been driving me crazy. It's like you'll see this really cool post that's like, oh, did you know in 1920 whatever this was built? And so it's like, great, now I want to read the comments, because usually in the olden days of a few years ago, when there was a really cool tweet about like something with like a historical fact or something going on, people who also were experts in that subject matter would leave really great commentary, and you could learn so much. That's done because now it's blue check mark. You looking at a clip of, you know, I don't know, Hindenburg, some Hindenburg post, and then the post under that is, you know, my nudes are in my bio, and then the next post under that is, you know, we gotta get rid of, I don't know, Ciroc, just random things, stuff that ain't got nothing to do with anything. I'm like, okay. And then you have a lot of the blue check folks all posting the same content, so you start to see the same subject matter. It's annoying. I can't stand it. So stupid. All right. I'm gonna almost jump back into this. Oh yeah, he ran NPR off Twitter, right? Because now NPR is all of a sudden too woke. Like, all right. And NPR, if anything, was one of the more balanced media outlets, right? Not y'all saying Civil War sponsored by Mountain Dew. Somebody said, what is my thoughts on Justin Timberlake? Oh, I forgot. Remind me at the end. Let me make a note to come to Justin. I'll get to him. See, I was trying to be mature. And y'all keep trying to get me to choose violence every time. All right, I got them written down. Okay, well, I'll get to Justin towards the end. Let's see. Oh, this is good. Kukui 79. And some of them came January 6th on private planes, acting like they're so listen, the leaders of all of that, this, the people who really need to be held accountable still haven't really seen the smoke. The ones who are really catching all the charges, all them people that really are fools who are dumb enough to go in there and do it. Folks who came and spent their last dime flying on Spirit from Nebraska to get to DC or wherever they came from, right? Those are the ones who really caught the tail end of a lot of the charges and the convictions and everything else like that. And mind you, they didn't even, a lot of them aren't doing a lot of time. They're getting a month in jail, a few weeks, a few month probation. A lot of them aren't even getting it that bad, to be honest. There's a handful that have gotten 10, 11, 12 years, but a lot of them got off, right? But yeah, a mess. All right. Let me see here. Oh, y'all done blocked somebody before I can get to what happened. Oh, anyway. Okay. Let us keep going. I want to jump into my next subject here. Let me do like 2 more things. Okay. I said we're going to get to Justin. Give me a minute, man. I ain't trying to get to him right now. Y'all about to cook him already. Okay. Okay. So the DEI, that's the next thing. So what I want to share, because first thing is I want you guys to pay attention to what's happened in the last few years, right? But before I do that, I just want to share a quick fact here, right? Because a lot has changed in the last year or 2 or 3, right? So we know there's now this movement of anti-DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. I always include the A, accessibility, because I think that's an important part of the conversation as well. So we're now in a space where there's all of a sudden this urge to combat DEI. It's now been weaponized. Now it's all of a sudden a bad thing, right? And so we have all these different things happening. So right now we have states that have introduced some kind of legislation that's currently on the ballot to ban, diversity, equity, inclusion. That's Arizona, that's Oklahoma, that's Kansas, that's Nebraska, that's Missouri, that's Iowa. That is Wisconsin, that's Kentucky, that's Indiana, that's Ohio, that's Pennsylvania, that's West Virginia, that's Alabama, and that's South Carolina. We have states that are in their final stages of legislative approval, meaning it's already passed in some spaces. It's just going through the rest of the state houses. That is wrong state, looking at the wrong one. That is, why is it not showing? Okay. All right. That is Oregon. That is Tennessee. That's North Carolina. That's Florida, right? And then we also have states where it's already been signed into law, right? That's North Dakota. That's Utah. That's Texas. We just saw something signed in Alabama, right? As of a few days ago. The one that went through Mississippi just actually failed. And then in states where they tried to pass something, but it failed. Montana, Wyoming, I'm sorry, I said Oregon. It was actually supposed to be Idaho. So Idaho, as far as states that are that either approved or finalized. Oregon was a state that actually failed to pass something, right? Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Georgia. So at this point, all but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. All but 22 states. Right, so more than half. We at least have 27 states right now that have put in some kind of legislation to ban some element of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, going back to what I was saying, I want people to pay attention to what we've seen in the last few years, right? So we already know that affirmative action was already on the chopping block, right? We've done enough videos on Edward Bloom and his obsession with Black folks and wanting to end every little element of progress we ever get, right? He's one of the main ones that, will say that when Black people try to do for themselves or support themselves through their organizations or their movements, that it is anti-white, it is anti-Asian, it is reverse discrimination, it is reverse racism, right? I have enough Edward Bloom videos, so I won't go down the rabbit hole, but you can just type in my name and type in Edward Bloom, B-L-U-M, and you can see all the nonsense he's a part of, right? But getting to my point, and actually, if you want to get like a really detailed one, go and watch my one on the Fearless Fund. But anyway, right, so affirmative action has already been on the chopping block, right? They have been doing everything in their power to get that out of here. So that's already been a thing. That's before the DEI thing, right? So what happens in 2020, right? We have George Floyd. We have global-wide protests, right? These protests take place. Corporations get scared. Businesses get scared. The whole world is uprising. All in the conversation of police brutality through the lens of anti-Blackness, right? And so corporations are getting scared because protesters are saying, hey, these are the companies that support so-and-so. Boycott them, boycott this one. In the same way that right now, a lot of companies are being boycotted for supporting what's happening in Gaza, right? So, boycott this, boycott that. So what do we end up seeing? We see all of these companies that come out and, oh, this company is pledging 20 million for diversity and community building. This organization is pledging 100 million for, diversity, blah, 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 for minority populations, for scholarships. This company, they're coming up with an entire new division specifically focused on inclusivity, right? And all these corporations are coming out with new things, and yeah, we're going to do this, and we're going to change the world. Everybody for that summer of 2020 was, we're here to fix the world, and all of a sudden, all the problems were magically disappearing. And even before that, think about even the NFL when they were catching their smoke before all this, right? With Colin Kaepernick, what did they come up with? Inspire change. We're going to inspire change, right? We're going to inspire change by selling some t-shirts, and the t-shirt revenue will go to, community programs, right? And we're going to let Jay-Z pick all the halftime acts. By the way, like I said, I'm telling you right now, they done gave us 5 black acts in a row. We are not getting one next year. Next year is going to be Taylor Swift or Pink or some rock band. So be ready. So y'all can go ahead and let the dream go of whoever else you thought was going to come up there. It won't be one of us. Right. So all these companies break their necks to, all these pledges for community building and diversity and everything else that is going to fix all the issues. Right. So understand. And that's mainly because, what was I saying before then? I've been saying since 2018 that the main thing everybody's been doing, they've been working to cement the nonsense, right? Cementing. They were already in the process of doing so. Then here comes 2020. It kind of disrupts that cementing. All of the punitive policy, the racist policy that was kind of being signed into legislation at local levels, all of that kind of pauses for a quick second. A lot of the companies that were turning a blind eye to, the money or who they were receiving money from, all that was kind of on pause. They got scared in 2020 because, listen, nobody expected for there to be major protests in every major metropolitan city. And then it spread across the world, right? Because America wasn't looking too good, right? And so understand 2020 opened the door to the question why. Now we're in a space where people have questions. We understand that there's police brutality, but why is it that it's happening in the way that it happens? And why does it keep happening? How does this become allowed? And when people ask questions why, people seek answers. And so we start to see this increase, right, of people who dig, people who want to teach, people who release information, books, podcasts, people on YouTube. Start digging into the history of this country. Start digging into the foundation of this country. Start digging into the shell, the framing of this country, looking at oppressive policy. Because it didn't just end with police brutality. That opened a Pandora's box where we're going to look into police brutality. We're going to look into what redlining was. Like, redlining was never a part of the national conversation until a few years ago, right? A lot of us had never even heard of it until, you start hearing about it a bit more. And there's books released like The Color of Law and everything like that, right? So, the idea of all these different things that are coming out. So people start questioning why. So you start digging and you see, okay, well, this is what the police departments are rooted in, what the initial purpose was. Okay, this is what the black codes were. This is what convict leasing was. This is what sharecropping did. This is what redlining did. This is why black people were left out of the FHA program. This is how black people being left out of the GI Bill affected folks. This is how housing discrimination still affects us today and affects the wealth gap. This is how the prison industrial, just thing after thing after thing after thing, atrocity after atrocity. Understand each atrocity chips away at that conversation of American exceptionalism. And like I've said before, the idea of American exceptionalism centers in the idea that America is this perfect utopia of greatness. And who is the face of America through the lens of those who endorse the idea of American exceptionalism? It's usually white folks, right? So the idea of challenging the United States, challenging American exceptionalism, challenges the idea of perfection within the realms of whiteness. Right? So you get into that space. And so it all works to disturb the status quo. And on top of that, platforms have shifted. TikTok has gotten bigger. And so you start to see these outlets of information where people are now not only researching, but digging and releasing things. And you get things like the 1619 project that gets released, right? TikTok, even though I think some people need to do a better job of vetting what they put out there, there's a lot of really great information on TikTok when you want to learn things. Same thing with Twitter, same thing with YouTube. Facebook is a little bit more complicated because everything just gets posted there. And like we said, the podcast and so on and so forth. But understand, all of that kind of helps to spearhead the urge to want to make a remedy for the problems that exist. So with the emergence of 2020, with the emergence of people having these uprisings, people getting nervous, and then we're also in the pandemic. So a lot of folks had nothing to do but sit at home and learn something new, right? Because some folks didn't think the world was ever going to return to a space where there was an element of normalcy. You know, people are in a space of trying to create a new norm. Everybody was in a space willing and ready to learn, right? And so that creates a problem because all of that goes against the status quo. And when you have a demographic of folks who are already comfortable, and it goes back to what I said about some folks who see themselves as the standard of operation, folks who see themselves as the standard of greatness. When you get to that space, you don't have to challenge yourself anymore. And so we've noticed that, and I think anybody who speaks on race can attest to this. Anybody, especially with a platform, who talks about race, and I'm not talking about feelings. We're past that on this channel. We're not just talking about, oh, you called me the N-word. I'm gonna cry. No, we're way past that. Okay, we're in the conversation of racism through policy, racism through implementation, racism through a power structure, racism through generations, racism through, just how many different layers you can unpeel, and the history of where the origins are and what the outcome is and how that affects people today. And, that's where we're at, right? So understand that because you have so many people doing that, it creates a new boogeyman, right? The boogeyman of complacency, the boogeyman of comfortability for white America, right? And at that point, asking questions is the boogeyman. And so that's how we end up getting all these new things where we get woke, right? We get CRT, right? You start getting the book bans and the attacks on librarians and let's put in a law where the librarians can be arrested. And let's go to Texas where we're going to get rid of the librarians. And we'll put it, what did they say? What they put chaplains in instead, like just stupidity, right? And so it's just shifted from all of that. And now DEI is in that same conversation. Understand that all of that goes back to what I was saying in 2018 about the idea of cementing. They're just getting back on code with what they were already doing before we had the interruption in 2020 of everybody finally seeing the light on different things. And that's why whenever you have any element of trying to remedy the flaws that exist, all of a sudden there's something wrong with it. People have to put in legislation. And because they've been cementing for years, there are tons of elected positions where you have people who are straight up idiots in charge. And this is why we've seen so much legislation get passed, or it's in the works, because while everybody got real comfortable and everybody was, I'm checked out, I'm done, and blah, 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 blah. Understand all of these local positions and stuff started getting filled, right? That's how we got Marjorie Taylor Greene. She got to run unopposed. Now you can't get rid of her, right? Because after she got in, the district got even more gerrymandered. So she's probably never leaving that position unless somebody more crazier than her comes in there, or unless she steps down, or unless Father Time calls her home for some reason, right? So, the cementing that people had been doing in 2018, it's just back to business. They're just getting back to what they were already doing, right? And so this is where DEI comes into the conversation, right? Because the other challenge is you have a lot of folks who, like I said, see themselves as the standard of operation, right? And so when they see other groups having any element of opportunity, they feel that that is an attack against them. They feel that that is an attack against their livelihood. And so they kind of latch into this space where now DEI has become interchangeable with affirmative action, when in reality, DEI has many different layers. So again, the idea of diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, it's not just about opening doors for people, but it's also about, like, here's a perfect example, right? This is where the accessibility comes in. If I open a business, right, and I'm on the third floor of some building, but the building doesn't have an elevator, somebody who's wheelchair bound, how are they supposed to get to work? That's the conversation of accessibility. How do they have access? Or even with accessibility, the conversation of if somebody is colorblind, right? And you have a PowerPoint on display and it has all these different colors. If there isn't some kind of language on there to help create a space for the person to understand that, hey, this might look orange to you, but really it's this color. That's that conversation of accessibility, right? Same thing for, YouTube has even jumped into that. You notice you can put captions on everybody's videos now. Accessibility, giving everybody the opportunity to have a shared experience. So now when we talk diversity, equity, and inclusion, we know what diversity is. Diversity is just all about getting additional voices in the room, getting additional spaces in the room. Because when you've had a system that has put what I would say is white men to the front in everything, because listen, we got a lot of mediocre folks in charge of everything right now with a lot of ego, right? But when we've lived under a system where white men have been pushed to the forefront to be the standard of everything, everybody else has to fight and claw just to even get an opportunity to be in any kind of space, right? There were systems that weren't even just built to uplift and push people in those positions, but close the door on everybody else. We're living in a space where the doors are still closed, and every time we try to just crack the door open, somebody comes to shut it down. That's kind of the fearless fund thing again, right? Black women, business owners being left out of all the venture capitalism funding, right? Never getting anything, I'll put them stats out again. It's 3 zeros. 0.0006% of all venture capital funding before the Fearless Fund started. And that was the fund that started where, okay, we're going to come up with grants to help Black women business owners have an opportunity to start their businesses. Mind you, these are grants for $20,000. Like we said before, $20,000 is not a lot of money, but it's a start. You know, they've been able to cut that number or to lift that number from 0.0006% to 0.039% of 1%. And even that was too much. Edward Bloom said, oh, hell no, I got something for y'all. And now that's in litigation. But again, so the idea of diversifying, but here's the challenge we run into. Because that demographic sees themselves as the standard of operation, they also see themselves as the standard of intelligence. They see themselves as the standard of how to do everything. And so they weaponize this whole language of qualified, right? That's the thing we hear all the time. Are they qualified? So now what happens is anytime somebody comes into a space, they are under the assumption that they're unqualified, when really this conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion is more so just ensuring that when people are coming to these spaces for opportunity, that those who are making the decisions actually look at the whole playing field, not just look at the cohort that they've always been supporting. That's really what that's about, right? But people have turned it into something where it's, oh no, it's just people are unqualified to get in the door. I'll say this. If I had to get some super invasive brain surgery that was, you know, I only have a 6% chance of making it through the surgery if I chose to get it. The doctor that I would want to operate on my brain, I would not just want a doctor that was just a white male because that was the standard and he was the best one. And what I mean by that is he was the best one out of the pool that was given. We never looked at the entire pool. I would want the doctor where they looked through the pool of every person that was eligible to do that kind of work, that they looked through the best of the best of the best. Yeah, bring me that person. And so what's ended up happening is, so when we talk about like Ivy League, right? These Ivy League schools, and a lot of them have legacy, right? There's a lot of kids that get into these Ivy League schools that are not the smartest in the room, that are not the epitome of intelligence and forward thinking. No, it's more so a situation of their parents or family or whoever else, they're 2 or 3 or 4 generations in, and they automatically get a ticket in the door. So, or they come from money and somebody donated money to the library, and the library is in their great grandfather's name. And so that's that conversation, the conversation of DEI, the conversation of, and I'm blending the worlds of affirmative action and DEI, since that's what they're trying to do. We too can play that game, right? And so in that space, it's just saying that, yes, we took this cohort of all these legacy students that were great, but by us doing that, did we close the door on additional students who may have been better suited, who may have, because understand, students who come from a space where they don't have the resources, they don't have the luxury to, you know, have, you know, courses to learn how to take the SAT or the LSAT and everything else like that, you know, understand they got to work 2 and 3 times harder. They have to really challenge themselves. They have to do it in a space where they don't have the resources for personal tutors and everything else like that. And going to more so the conversation of qualifications, because like I said, we're merging the worlds of affirmative action and DEI, since people are using them interchangeably. So I can do the same right now for this argument. Like, again, when we talk about qualifications, who were the faces of the college admission scandal? Right. And what makes it even funnier, these are wealthy people. And then when you look at what they did, it wasn't even that they had people cheat and take their SATs, but what did they do? Oh, I'm going to apply as an athlete. You took a spot away from somebody who was an actual athlete. Like this is what I'm talking about, where it's like the nonsense that's there. But the thing is, so going back to DEI, this is more so about the workplace. This is more so about ensuring that people in their workspaces or in public spaces have the same opportunity and are treated in a fair space where, you know, their experience does not work as their discrimination. Right. And so you have people breaking their necks to shut all that down because there's a fear. And it's interesting. Understand, a state like Alabama gutting DEI and all the universities. Can we talk about the demographics of Alabama? It's interesting that in the states that tend to have more diverse populations, this is where you see the most aggression, right? A state that has a huge Black population, you want to all of a sudden gut the DEI conversations, right? And so the idea of creating an equal playing field, or at least diversifying or giving opportunity to more people and not just pulling out of the same pool, for some folks, that feels like it's an attack on them. And that's why they're going to fight and claw all of this, because, again, it goes against the status quo. That idea of cementing, in order to stay at the top, you got to keep everybody else beneath you. You know, Toni Morrison had that quote before, where it's, again, if you're only on top because people are beneath you are still on their knees, then you have a serious problem. America has a serious problem. That's where we're at, right? The only way at this point that you can keep a lot of white America satisfied and content with the idea of mediocrity is if nobody else can ever rise past the bar that they've set for themselves. And the issue is, Other groups of people, black folks, so on and so forth, have already set bars that are higher than what the current standard is, right? This is why we talk about the numbers of who's the most educated demographic in the country right now, black women. Now, there's a bigger conversation about when you talk about delineation under that umbrella, but again, that's scary for folks, right? Black women weren't supposed to be having no education. Hell no, because they're surpassing white women at this point. So no, we got to cut some things. And so when you talk about the affirmative action conversation, again, they painted everything to be black folks being lazy and folks who took somebody else's spot, when in reality, who benefited the most from affirmative action? White women. So to watch them run behind and celebrate the ending of affirmative action, I was like, well, y'all gonna learn the hard way, right? And so it transfers over to the conversation of DEI, right? And so that's kind of the nonsense we're in. I look at there's an attack right now on Howard University's medical school, where people are trying to sue and say, you guys have to diversify. This is racist against white people. And the question becomes how? HBCUs don't have a rule that white people can't go there. As a matter of fact, a lot of white people choose HBCUs because they didn't get into whatever school they wanted to get into, and they look at HBCUs as the backlog option. And because HBCUs will often give them a full ride, that's when they go. Remember the student we talked about that sued Howard? I think he sued the business school. Like we keep seeing that same pattern. And just understand, like when you're talking about like dentists, right? The dentistry school out of Howard, 3 of the 4 black dentists in the United States come out of Howard's dentistry school. So like, because these institutions in the past discriminated against us, Xavier as well is a really huge institution as far as black doctors out of Louisiana. But again, because we've seen so many systems where black people were pushed out, right? Weren't granted access, weren't allowed into a lot of these universities until after Brown v. Board of Education. We had to create our own institutions. We had to create our own spaces to grow and build ourselves. And now you're watching even that be attacked, right? And so understand this whole attack on DEI it's just phase 2 of the affirmative action smoke. It's just phase 2 of the CRT smoke. It's phase 2 of let's go attack woke. You know, Ron DeSantis, when he attempted to run for president, his whole platform wasn't about anything of substance. It was, we're going to end woke. And I'm like, what? I don't get it. And the fact that y'all already hijacked the term and didn't even know how to use it properly, right? You go and hijack something, don't even know how to use it. Ask a white person what woke is, and they struggle to tell you. And really, I'm like, just go on and say what you really want to say. They struggle to answer these questions. And so, again, we got a lot of mediocre folks who are in charge running everything. And they want to stay there. And when you're mediocre, but you have power and resources, you don't have to challenge yourself to anything because the standards is already set for you. The world that's been created for you is already locked in. It's set as precedent, right? Now understand, opening the door for new faces, new viewpoints, everything else, that goes against precedent. That goes against that nice cushion that you're sitting in. And that's why so many are fighting so hard. And because the United States as a whole has not invested in its people, the majority demographic in this country is starting to fall by the wayside with regard to education, intelligence, so on and so forth. And you're starting to see, because we also see, again, the attack on education, right? We've seen the attacks on gutting and underfund, like cutting funding to different things. I know Orange Man was saying that with the vaccines, any public school that was going to mandate vaccines for the kids, we were going to, defund, which I'm like, okay, so we already got a measles outbreak. Now, y'all want the mumps to come back too? So you're just seeing a space where, again, a world that a lot of people have created for themselves that made them comfortable because other groups of people are tired of being the gum under people's shoe and they've been doing things to get themselves in the door. People have to do what they got to do to kind of shut that back down. That's what all of this is rooted in. That's why all of this is happening so fast and so quickly, right? A lot of people didn't even know what DEI was 6 months ago. Now, all of a sudden, in the same way that CRT, people assume that, college level course or discourse was being taught in kindergarten classes. Here comes the boogeyman, right? CRT. And you just stupid. When I tell you people are so dumb, I just, Lord, right? A mess, right? And the challenge is, in order for a society to keep growing, people have to continue to evolve. And the challenge with the United States is white people collectively have stopped choosing to evolve as a society, right? That's why elections are the way they are. That's why we have the candidates we have now, right? Because at this point, any candidate that goes against the grain or any candidate that really could give some really great things goes against the status quo, right? So we end up with what's familiar, right? And then people vote for candidates that they're not even excited about. They have to vote in the space of harm reduction, which we said a million times. The idea of, damn, this is not even what I want, but if I don't do this, then these are more things that get chopped off. These are more things that are on the chopping block. So let me get behind this candidate that I'm not excited about. Like, that's reality. So, it is a hot freaking mess. I'm going to pause because I've said a whole lot here, but yeah. And then what makes it even crazier even under the conversation of DEIA, there's still groups that get left out, right? Because the way that systemic racism works, there's still groups that are still the bottom of even those conversations, honestly, which makes it even crazier. So there's so many layers with all this, but understand that all of this is rooted in anti-Blackness. It's all centered in that, all right? The idea of people having to come up is an absolutely not, right? It's just not happening. And especially because we have a huge demographic of white America that is what you call the working poor. And they're seeing other groups of people come into success, come into spaces. They're seeing the anomalies. They're seeing people that's pissing them the hell off. So yeah, let me go and vote for the candidate that's going to get rid of all that. So yeah, I can get behind a candidate that had no platform. Their whole platform was where woke goes to die. Yeah, I'm running behind that. So never mind my health care. Never mind the education of my children. Never mind what happens with minimum wage. Never mind what happens with climate change. Never mind what happens with emission standards. You know, everybody in my city got asthma. We all choking, but we don't care about the emissions standard. Never mind all of that, because you know what? This candidate is going to get rid of woke, when in reality, nobody even knew what woke was 2 years ago until folks started minding Black people's business and found the term and then used it wrong. Make it make sense. Anyway. Okay. Let's see. Joe Mario said, only a fool would say I'm not racist out one side of their mouth and then want diversity out on the other side. And that's a lot of these folks, they do the gaslighting. Y'all sit here because it goes back to, we're colorblind. And that's what I've said, because one, I'm going to say this, and I hate to put it in the universe, there's going to be a lot of punitive policy that gets passed in the next few years. It's still going to continue, right? There's going to be more things that we lose. And a lot of it also has to do with just language, right? So when we came into the idea of colorblindness initially, this is a term that started to become popular in the 70s. The idea was about people not judging others by their race, right? People not judging or giving people positions based on their race, right? It was from a positive standpoint where let's make sure we include everybody. But because that language was not specific in a lot of the laws and everything that were put out or the policy, people on the other end of the argument utilize that same thing to weaponize it. And that's why something like Fearless Fund is catching the smoke it's catching now, because they're like, oh, that's not colorblind. That's reverse discrimination against people who aren't Black women, because what happened to colorblindness? It should just be for everybody, right? Same thing. I know in the state of Virginia, they have Thomas Jefferson High School. It's really, really popular scientific mathematics school. And the issue was that the school was just not diverse. The majority of the population of the school was the Asian population. And, you know, there had been efforts to diversify because a lot of Black students were being left out. Latino students were being left out. All of these other groups, Native American students were being left out. And so the school started going into spaces to try to diversify and make sure that they're checking all the different pools of applicants and making sure that there's a fair shot. And there was a whole lawsuit coming from the parents of the Asian students who felt like, no, this should be colorblind. This is on merit and qualifications. And y'all are making this is anti-Asian, right? And so like you constantly see how people will often take verbiage and weaponize it if it can benefit their experience. And so that's what we've seen so many times. So even when, you know, we had the situation with McCarthy getting ousted out of the House and they were trying to bring in the next House representative. And what is this dude's name? It's the dude that I can't stand. He's such a freaking lunatic. Let me see. I gotta find his name. What is that, man? He's on the come up. It's this Black Republican congressman. I'm trying to think of his name. What is his name? What is this man's name? Jesus, hold on. I know one of y'all got it in the chat. Let's see if one of y'all got it. I want to say Byron Donald. Is it Byron Donald? Let me type his name in. Let me see. Yes, Byron Donalds, right? So anyway, getting to my point. So when they were trying to get the House Speaker, right? Nobody wanted McCarthy. And so they throw Byron Donalds up there, right? Now, understand the policy that Byron Donalds gets behind, everything about it is centered in things that make life great for white America. Black folks pay the burden and the brunt of the expenses and the punitive aspect, right? His policy is rooted in anti-Blackness. There's lots of things he goes against. He's not really what's best for Black America at all. This is a man that does the tap dancing because, again, just like we kind of said with some of these people who will throw their community under the bus for a come up, he's one of them. But one of the things that they did, at one point, he got nominated for Speaker of the House. And then another person from that party was like, and I just want to say, this is the first African-American nominated for Speaker of the House. I said, oh, y'all love to play these games. Oh, y'all love to play these games. Because understand, Byron Donald moves in the same way that Tim Scott moves. He moves in the same way that Clarence Thomas moves, in the same way that Herman Cain was moving, right? Sheriff Clark. I ain't seen him in a while. Remember Sheriff Clark with the Captain Crunch badges and everything that had nothing to do with his actual division of work in the police force? They know what they're doing. So yeah, they will go ahead and take, the mouthpiece, right? They'll take the token and put them out there and then use the term diversity. So it's all about understanding that even the terms we use, we have to be so specific at this point in regard to getting the things that we want, because people at this point, when you're desperate to maintain a status quo, you throw anything at the wall until it sticks. And so right now, that's why they keep attacking everything and moving in the way that they move, right? All right, let me go back to the comments here. I didn't mean to get on my soapbox again. Let me see here. Money. Melody said they don't want black people to have anything. They stopped affirmative action so you can't get into their schools. Now they're going after the HBCUs, and this is on top of underfunding them. What did I just read about Tennessee? I just read something about Tennessee changing something with how they funded one of the schools, and I want to say that school is an HBCU. Let me see here. I don't like putting stuff out here if I haven't done the full research, because I don't want to be putting wrong information out here. But I just literally read something coming out of Tennessee. Do I have it? Oh, even Kentucky. Kentucky House passed a bill to shut down DEI offices at public universities and bar degree requirements that include courses containing discriminatory concepts. Because again, they're going to paint themselves to be the victim, calling out or addressing, or not even calling out, but just getting to the origins of politics in the United States and the history of the United States from a lens of race is, again, attacking whiteness. So we must end that nonsense. Crazy people are lunatics. I'm going to move on from this Tennessee thing because I can't seem to find it. I'll just bring, just in, Tennessee Senate Republicans voted to vacate the Tennessee State U Board, Tennessee's only public HBCU. This after underfunding them by billions for decades. Senate Republicans passed their bill to vacate Tennessee State's entire board of trustees. Tennessee's only public HBCU has been underfunded by $2 billion over time, which I think we talked about maybe 2 lives ago. Senator Charlene Oliver says this meddling may also disrupt the college's presidential search by discouraging good candidates. And this was a vote of, let me see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 25-6 as far as gutting that. So again, that idea of cementing and locking these kind of things in. So that's why I'm like, you have to really pay attention to what's happening. And even the policy you get behind, I hope people that are putting in policy are understanding the language, because at this point, now the language is being used against us. So colorblind can't be a conversation anymore, right? Colorblind cannot be a conversation anymore. Even in the conversation of reparations, there can't be a bill that's saying reparations because of racism, because then white people can make that same argument, say, oh, well, I was discriminated against. I went to a party and I saw these black Greeks or whatever they are. They were dancing and I tried to get in the middle of the circle and one of them pushed me out the way and I was discriminated against because I'm white. Yeah, it's going to be that. So understand, a mess. Nerd Lars said they arrested the chief of police of Rio today for assassinating that black congresswoman in Brazil in 2018. Oh, wow. I have to go back and read into that. Byron Donaldson. Yeah, that one there. Lord. And my thing is, if you see yourself as a standard of operation and greatness, then you should not feel intimidated or challenged when other people come into the same space. If you still think you're the greatest, you shouldn't have nothing to worry about. If you've done the work, if you've earned the merit, you shouldn't be worried at all. You should welcome the challenge, right? Gloria said, I don't know if you want to discuss Candace Owens again. I mean, I already said what I said. Like, I don't have a whole lot to say because she's not somebody I like to give too much energy to on this channel. But I will say, because I knew not to go and read the comments after day one. They probably on there lashing me to death. But, like I said, we will see how that goes. But it's interesting because some folks were really trying to pass it off like, well, no, y'all just are all sheep and y'all move in the same way, and you need to hear her out. And I'm like, this is the same person that was saying that lynching wasn't that bad during the eras of lynching. And there were only 3,500 people who were lynched. It wasn't as big of a deal as people made it out to be. This is the same person that worked for PragerU. We talked about PragerU, this which is now starting to be implemented in some state schools, where PragerU, their goal, this is something ran by some old conservative man. The goal, again, is to preserve the idea of American exceptionalism and the greatness of the forefathers and the founding fathers and all that crap. And so now you're watching them water down history, right? The idea that Christopher Columbus wasn't that bad, right? Slavery wasn't that bad. Slavery actually, even though there were some things that took place, I mean, it gave people housing and they got food, and sometimes they would dance after and gather. And a lot of the people who owned the slaves were nice. They took care of their slaves. I'm just like, she worked with them, right? But y'all want to sit here and get mad at me because I said I see through the nonsense. Like, no, absolutely not. Y'all run behind her if you want to. Good luck. Have fun. But I'm good on Candace. I already said my 2 cents. I could have said a whole lot more, but I said I already said enough. My point had already been made because I was really going to really drag her, but I said I'll let it go. Because she ain't the only one, but she just is the topic of discussion at the moment because her name is circulating everywhere. But, the Candace disciples, for those who hated everything I said about her, will go on and donate to it and help her in, because I feel like you can help her more than camping out on my channel trying to cuss me out because you didn't like what I said. Anyway. What up, Nan Nelson? What are your thoughts on programs for descendants of American chattel slavery as ethnic group as a way to avoid conservatives attacking race-based policies? That kind of goes back to hold on. Program for that goes back to what I was saying about descriptive language in those bills, right? So even when you talk about, like, because I know right now the reparations conversation is starting to become very expansive and everybody's fighting clawing on who gets what, blah, 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 and who qualifies. And I think even like so the perfect example, like, so say we were trying, or say a reparations bill is passed, right? In the language of who qualifies, because what would end up happening is the same thing we saw with the blood quantum laws. We're going to have a whole lot of people who are all of a sudden Native American back in the day, right? Everybody was Native American when they realized you could just pay somebody off, sign some paper. And we got a whole lot of folks running around who are Cherokee and they're not Cherokee, right? We would see that same thing. So I think with something like reparations, the language would literally have to be, okay, in order to qualify for the segment of reparations that ties into American chattel slavery, your lineage, does it trace back to this, right? And then I personally think reparations should go further than just slavery. For me, I think reparations are owed for everything in regard to sharecropping, convict leasing, everything with especially housing discrimination, all these different things. So even if we were talking about redlining, right, the language would have to be specifically, do you come from a lineage or do you have anybody in like the last 4 or 5 generations of your family who specifically were denied housing opportunities based on redlining, which centered in their races, Black Americans, or centered in their experience of not being white. Like, you have to literally be specific and write all that down, because at this point, we're in a space where everybody is starting to hijack and saturate into different movements. And again, that idea of manipulating language. If you're not careful, the very people who should actually be paying off reparations will be getting big checks. So I think you have to be very careful, right? And I think there's tiers with reparations, because there's some who are going to say, well, I was racially discriminated against, I think I should get this piece and this part. But for me, I think the bigger piece of the pie is understanding that had slavery never taken place to begin with, we would have never even got to the part of the racial discrimination. So everything has these different tiers, right? And I think there's different pockets of that conversation. I don't think it's just a check, and I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all blanket and everybody who feels some kind of way, come on under, we all get it. I think there's so many layers to it. That would have to be another video. I'd be here all day explaining that. But yeah, a mess. Okay. Victory begins in garden. She said, oh, donations. I fell out. I fell out when I said donations. My thing was, if she didn't spend so much time constantly going against, because okay, I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but let me get this off my chest too. The other beef that I have with her, some people try to say, well, her goal is to help Black people progress and not be I don't like anybody that uses the term victimhood, because it automatically dismisses the plight of what happened. And the other thing is this: to me, there's nothing wrong with being a victim of a system that screwed you over. So there's nothing wrong with the idea of being a victim. And what happens is when you use terms like victimhood, which is a white talking point and always has been, it dismisses the actual plight of the argument and the plight of the experience of the person who's on the receiving end of the discrimination from a systemic standpoint and through policy by kind of doing the blanket statement. They do that with things like even the idea of race card. Oh, that's the race card. You can put everything under the race card bubble and you can dismiss it all. Same thing, they're doing that with woke, right? Oh, here comes woke, 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 woke. You can put everything under the woke bubble and it will dismiss the conversation every time. They do that with victimhood as well. You know how many times I can literally have a video, and I'm not even talking about the lives. I'm talking about when I do like a pre-made video that actually has the visuals and the numbers to support. I can talk numbers all day and there's still somebody in here, well, victimhood, when are y'all going to finally move on from it? I just literally gave you the numbers on how to hit. Okay, so yeah, that there is kind of like my beef with her. Any conversation she's ever had of black people is always condescending until a few weeks ago where she magically started talking about, oh, we were talented and this, that, and the third. I said, oh, okay, all right. But I mean, every conversation is always condescending. Even when she was on that Revolt TV summit, every point that she had about us was something condescending or the idea of we're too stupid to realize we need to run with the Republicans. I'm like, no, here's the thing. The Democrats definitely have their flaws, but the flaws of the Democrats do not negate the aggressions of Republicans. And my smoke for Democrats is not going to be erased because, or it's not going to erase the rage I have with Republicans, right? And so it's kind of like she just moves in a space where we're all too stupid. Like I said before, with this conversation of the two-party system, if you got a house, the basement is flooding, but the kitchen is on fire, which one do you go after first? I feel like that's the space that we're living in right now. The basement is going to flood slower than the fire is going to spread. And I feel like we need to be focusing. We can focus on both, but really understand that, get that fire out first, because at this point, if you let the fire take over anything, it doesn't matter about the basement being flooded because there won't be a house anymore. That's how I see it. It's not painting one to be the hero and one to be anything, but it's just like she moves in this way where every time she has anything to say about us, it's negative. And then when I look at who she runs with, I don't see enough of us in the circle. When I saw that wedding picture and it wasn't none of us there, I said, I mean, okay. So, I mean, and listen, if that's what she wants to run with, go for it. But you don't get to speak on my behalf and what you think is best for me and mine, especially when you've been in the way of everything. I'm not doing it. No. Can't do it. All right. We got so much to say. Oh yeah, if reparations ever comes through, those diaspora wars, my God, give us the strength. That's gonna be a mess. Right? My thing with reparations, I want everybody to get what's theirs. I want every marginalized group of people to get what is owed to them from whoever owes it to them, right? But I'll leave it at that. Let everybody get what is rightfully theirs. I feel like Black Americans have a claim in the United States, just in the same way where I feel like a lot of people in the Caribbean have a claim against countries in Europe, and the same thing with the continent of Africa. They have claims in the continent of Europe. Black and Latin South America and Central America have claims against, including the United States, to be honest. All these places got claims. I want everybody to get theirs. Anyway, moving on. Those are this is gonna be quick because I don't even have the patience for this. Angel Reese, right? I just dropped my little what's that page I had? Do I have it? Oh well, I'll go from the dome, it doesn't matter. Okay, Angel Reese. So you know right now it's March Madness, right? And I saw that Angel Reese has been getting dragged because people are pissed off because she did a nice little bye-bye to somebody who, you get too many fouls, they kick you out the game. It's just so funny to see that every time she does the same thing that everybody else does, they got smoke for her, right? Interesting, because remember when she did the thing, think piece after think piece. Like, I'm gonna go to Twitter right now. I'm just gonna read some tweets in real time. Let's go to Angel Reese and see what's being said, right? Angel, where you at? Angel Reese, where are you? I just saw you earlier. I'll just type her name in. All right. She was trending when I made the title of this video. All right. Okay. So like I said, all she did was wave bye-bye to somebody that kept following everybody. Let's see. Who's some of these people that are mad? Really? Yeah, let's go to the comments. You guys see, you got to find the video and then go to the comments. That's where the good stuff is at. All right, let's see here. It's been 0 days since Angel Reese once again embarrassed herself. Angel Reese loves being the villain. Since I'm not a coach and have zero impact on this lady's journey, I, for one, hope to see someone knock her on her ass. And mind you, I'm just reading them in order. I'm not even like scrolling. Well, now I'm scrolling. Let's see what else is on here. Some more white folks mad. We're not going to talk about the flop job here from Angel Reese. LeBron level embarrassing. Let's see. Somebody said it's January 6th in the comments, by the way. She has no class. If a male player did this, they would be crucified. Actually, which leads me to my next point. Actually not, because again, going back, it's interesting that when it comes to, especially black women in these sports, because this is a conversation of what we call imaging, right? So a long time ago, I did this video. It was when Ari Lennox, people had said some things about her looks, and somebody said she kind of looked like a sexy pit bull or something like that, right? And she ain't like, so we had this video where we talked about just the imaging of how people are perceived through the lens of race, and how when it comes to white women, they've always been seen as virtuous, nimble, godlike, warm, soft, they're the voice of understanding and compassion. That's the image. I don't know who the PR team was, but they did a good job of doing that. As for black women, they're always seen as vile or sexual beings, right? Utilized for violence, aggression, high tolerance for pain, and everything else like that. And so what happens is when we get into these spaces where it's black and white women going against each other in sports, every time a black woman lets her personality shine, right? Responds emotionally to whatever's happening, because this is an emotionally triggering sport, they are always painted to be the villain, right? We saw that with Serena Williams. We saw that with Venus. We're seeing it with Coco. We're seeing it, even Naomi, they were doing it to Naomi, right? And so with Serena and who was she always going? The one that kept getting caught doping. Remember Serena beat her while she was doped up and Serena was pregnant? Was that Anna Kournikova, whoever? But anyway, the ideas of how they paint Serena to be just this monster, Sharapova. Okay, Maria Sharapova, my bad, wrong person, right? They painted her to just be this monster, just violent, aggressive, unprofessional. She's whining, da-da-da-da-da. And so it's just interesting to see how people move, because I noticed when it comes to women's sports, black women are not given the grace to be aggressive. But when white girls do it, it's tough. Oh, she's so tough. Like, think about when Sarah Palin was running with McCain as vice president, and she was like, what's the difference between a pit bull and a hockey mom? Lipstick. And the whole crowd was like, yeah, they look tough, get in there, yeah, real tough. There's even this image of like the idea of like the super strong white woman that's like praised, right? So we get all these shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and all Xena Warrior Prince, like all of that kind of stuff where it's like celebrated, like, yeah, the tough woman. So white women get the luxury to be as aggressive as they want. Black women have to always be soft, because if they have any element of personality, they're aggressive, right? So you saw how they did that with Michelle Obama, right? They do that with everybody. And it's so funny because when they want to talk about sports and everything, they only bring up class when it comes to women's sports. Because I said, let it be a baseball game, let that pitcher throw that pitch out, and that batter gets hit, and he looks up, and he throws that back down, he gets up, and then the whole dugout clears, and everybody's out there, and it's just a pounding. And what is the crowd doing? They're not saying, oh my God, these people have no class. Oh, what about the children? Oh, these are not good examples. No, they're in there like, yeah. And if some of them could jump out on the field, they would do it too, right? Hockey, right? Some of them players, I don't even think want to play hockey. They just go out there to fight. They be out there with a stick. They ain't been chasing the puck the whole game. They just waiting for somebody to do them wrong, right? Hockey is celebrated to fight, right? And then even when you talk football, what pisses off white people the most? When a black person scores a touchdown and does some little dance. Unsportsmanship conduct, they be pissed. That person really needs to humble down. They can't stand to see us celebrating, and they can't stand to ever see us have a space where like we're in a capacity to celebrate a win, especially if it's over one of them. So yeah, they're doing this whole thing of painting Angel Reese to be terrible, but I'm like, y'all pick and choose how you want to move in. It's NASCAR, right? They're not even physically doing anything. They're driving. Somebody cuts somebody off and their car gets tore up. Oh, they love a good NASCAR fight. Somebody gets out the car and ready to square off, right? Crazy. So it's interesting to see how the goalpost continues to move. I'm like, y'all be on some nonsense. What else did they say about this girl? Yeah, they hate her. They can't stand the confidence. They did the same thing with Sha'Carri Richardson, especially once they realized, oh, she smokes marijuana. And she got tattoos and she got these long extensions and everything. Oh, yeah, she is not a representation of our country. They love to vilify that girl. They're just so full of crap. Somebody said stuff like this is going to prevent WNBA teams from taking her. First of all, they ain't making but $45,000 a year. Y'all acting like it's okay. Man. Crazy. Easily the most unlikable player and program in all of college sports. Everything. Badminton, swimming, rowing. She's the worst. They hate this girl. Reese is a showboat and lacks class, in my honest opinion. And I'm clicking this person's. Oh, well, they got porn on their page. The first thing you see is areolas. Okay, class. Right. Anyway, let me read some comments here. Charlene said, take a water break. Thank you. I just got my sip. I needed it earlier. That's a good point. Nandy Johnson said, if they made reading and writing illegal, that is proof that they feel severely insecure regarding smart, intelligent black folks. It's really what it is. And I've always said, like, especially, this is why YouTube is an interesting platform, right? Because I feel like YouTube is one of the spaces where you have a lot of black content creators that are really calling things out as they see it, right? And I think it pisses people off when they click a video that has however many thousands of views and there's somebody laying out facts and history. Like, they can't stand that. And so I noticed that, and I just said this to somebody yesterday, like, I noticed that a lot of times if I'm getting blowback in the comments, I notice a lot of people are not arguing or disagreeing because they want to learn or they don't see it this way and they want you to hear them out. It's more so they're fighting to protect the status quo. And I think that's the difference we're seeing. And it's not just YouTube, it's just in general. When black folks are fighting for anything, right? We are literally fighting harm reduction. We are fighting to just get the bare minimum, right? Which is not even a whole lot. But other folks are fighting to maintain their status quo. So when they combat and argue and do everything in their power to kind of shut things down, it's not about them wanting to debate or having a difference of opinion. That's them protecting what they see as their only outlet for livelihood at your expense. That's what that's about. So it's interesting. I noticed on this channel when I have different videos, like, I know if I were to go, actually, I'll do it right now. Let me go look at some of these comments on my Candace Owens video because I know I haven't read them all. Prime example, let's see here. You know, a lot of times people will show up with an authoritative disposition as if I'm supposed to be in a position of submission to their opinion because they said so. That's how it goes. All right, let's see. Calvin reads his bad comments. Let's see what we have here. Let's see. Here's another one. She only wants the black community to love themselves because apparently we don't love ourselves unless we align with somebody who hates us, right? Let's see. Let's see. What else we got in here? Juneteenth says we free. You have your opinion, but recognize we free. I don't know what you're talking about, but okay. Please delete this video, friend. So on what subject do you disagree with Candace? Let's see. It's actually funny that black commentators actually think Candace cared to come over to the black side for support. She ain't thinking about y'all. That's fine with me. Let me see. Haven't heard the not as cuckoo. Oh, actually, they agree with me on that one. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. The problem with the black community is the lack of discernment and abandonment of a ruling class mentality, rendering your rebellion against your current plight. You, Calvin, and your ilk and Candace have abandoned the black community with your rhetoric and talking points. Two things can be true at once. You don't what? You don't get credit for condoning or condemning the obvious, young brother. Move for okay, you got it. School me, whatever you just said. Yeah. She doesn't need your approval. She'll be just fine. It's not the end of, like it's gonna be this for like thousands. I think this video has like 3,000 comments or something. I don't know. But anyway, getting to my point, you will get the kickback all day, and then you also get the black folks in the collective. That again, you got some black folks who sadly, hey, there's a lot of black folks who I think don't like black folks collectively. They like themselves. They like their individual experience. So yeah, they'll latch on to the same anti-black talking points as well if it means that they can move up a bit. If it means that they can appear to be more intelligent than the collective, because there's a lot of black folks who think black people collectively are just stupid, right? So they must be the beacon of light for the rest of us. Anyway, enough on these people. I didn't mean to talk about this girl this long. Like I said, she seems to be trending. Yep, they love a good hockey fight, of course. Yeah, that's the good. You take your boy to that game. Yeah, they love to take their kids to that stuff. Yeah, it's a good time. Everybody come out here and see a brawl. That's what I'm talking about. Hell, we literally have wrestling as a sport, right? It's entertainment, but it's technically violence, right? But you love that. If a wrestler's too nice, you boo him, right? Think about when The Rock first started. Remember when The Rock first came into wrestling and he was, because his father was one too. But remember he came and, I'd like to thank my family, and they used to boo him because he was too nice. How do you think The Rock turned into, can you smell what The Rock is, all that. He had to change the image, right? So it's interesting how everything moves. Yeah, for my own peace of mind, I don't sit and read every comment because what's the point? You already know everybody ain't going to agree with you. So I'll read the comments on day one. After that, I'm not about to argue all day. Yeah, absolutely not. I ain't got that kind of patience. My thing is, if you don't like what I said, just go to something else, right? I don't go out and seek. Like, I'm not camped out on the right-wing media, social media platforms and looking at every, Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro and whoever else are people that I don't care for. I'm not looking at their stuff and then going in there and arguing with everybody. I already know where y'all stand, so I'll leave y'all over there and y'all think. My thing is, I feel like people just all want to be left alone. So yeah, y'all do y'all cuckoo stuff over there, but just like I said, don't bring that foolery over here. You stay over there with that. That's all I got. All right? Like, man. Okay, we need to move on. I spent too much time on this. What else do I have here? Oh, I did want to cover this one. Okay, I think this is my last. Oh, I got two more heavy ones. Actually, damn, I got a few more. Shit. Shoot. Y'all didn't hear that. All right. I did want to briefly talk about the Goon Squad. Now, remember, we covered this before. This was the Mississippi police officers that pretty much like sodomized and sexually abused a black victim before, right? But they've all been sentenced. I just want to get the numbers here. Let me see here. All right, 6 former Mississippi cops, part of a Goon Squad in Rankin County Sheriff's Department, will all serve long prison sentences for torturing Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker in 2023. They deserve every day and every hour of it, says civil rights attorney Malik Shabazz, right? Let me go to the actual article. I mean, if you saw and read the stuff that they did to these two, like crazy. Now, this article is coming from the 20th, so things have changed already. The 4th of 6 Mississippi former law enforcement officers who pleaded guilty to subjecting 2 black men to racially motivated torture in January of 2023 were sentenced to decades in prison on Wednesday. Christian Dedman, a former Rankin County Sheriff's deputy, was sentenced to 40 years in prison for his role in torturing Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker, and for a separate incident where he led the torture of a white man, Alan Smith, in December of 2022. Dedman, who did not look at Jenkins and Parker as he spoke, apologized and said he never forgave himself for the pain he caused. They always do that once they get caught. But I'm like, how is it that when you're in the moment doing what you do, something's not telling you that this is wrong? That's why okay, playing on somebody else's face. Earlier this weekend, Daniel Opdyke, another former attorney, a deputy, was sentenced to 17.5 years in prison by U.S. District Judge Tom Lee in the Jackson Federal Court for his role in torturing Jenkins and Parker. He faced up to 20 years in prison. In court on Wednesday, Opdyke cried profusely and apologized to Jenkins and Parker, saying that the isolation behind bars has given him time to reflect on how I transformed into a monster that I became that night. And for me, that's the part that is scary. The fact that you have to sit in a jail cell before you realize that something like this is wrong. And unfortunately, we have so many in society where they are perfectly fine with these kind of things happening because, again, when you get to operate as a standard, you get to run around with no consequence. You get to run around to no avail in regard to accountability. You get to run around where you can water down the atrocities because you can create a space where the people that you're doing the things that you're doing to, or the people that you're doing the things to, you don't have to see them as human, right? That's how we get to a space where when you had lynchings, they were almost like a community event where the whole town came out because people became so desensitized to Black death and Black struggle, where it's the idea of putting us into a space where we're not even seen as human. And whatever happened to us, we deserved it because we're monsters, right? Which is why, going back to Candace, you can't sit here and talk about, oh, it was only 3,500 of them. They weren't that bad. All right, well, you go on and sign up and you go hang off a tree and tell me how it is. You tell me how that experience is since it ain't that bad, right? Crazy. Let me see. On Tuesday, 2 fellow officers were sentenced to years in prison. Former Sheriff's Deputy Hunter Edward received just over 20 years, while Jeffrey Middleton, another former deputy and leader of the Goon Squad that abused 2 men, was handed 17.5 years in prison. The two remaining officers, Deputy Brett McAlpine and Officer Joshua Hartsfield, are scheduled to sentencing on Thursday. From what I understand, they've already been sentenced. This article's a few days old. But I'm gonna stop there. But again, the idea of the fact that something like that was so normalized in the police force there, where that could happen, right? And they were so comfortable doing it because they knew that in the past, that blue wall, that blue shield, right? So many police have been coddled and protected from doing, or facing consequence of their actions, right? That's the only reason they moved in the space that they moved, because anybody with common sense would know that this is not going to go well, right? Anybody with common sense would know this is probably not something I should align myself with, because, if I'm ever caught or arrested or charged, it's probably the end game for me, right? But again, that idea of how certain practices have become so normalized that, again, literally these people move with no consequence. This is life for them. And I'm just like, absolutely crazy. Is there any additional details I want to cover in this? I'm trying to bypass what was actually done to the victims because it's a lot. But again, the idea of torturing somebody, right? That we're all about the Constitution. Any other time they want to talk about freedom of speech and everything, you would think cruel and unusual punishment should be something that people are passionate about. It's unusual, and that is a crazy punishment to randomly torture people, right? Make it make sense. Anyway, I'm gonna keep going. And then, okay, I'm gonna be quick on this one too. Florida, with this new law to kind of outlaw homelessness in public spaces. Here's my thing. Let me see if I can find an actual tidbit here. Florida homeless. Like, my thing is this, because DeSantis just, Florida, don't put that man in charge anymore. I don't get how you guys can continue to sleep well at night with him in charge. Florida homelessness to be banned from sleeping in public spaces under the DeSantis-backed law. Florida's homelessness will be banned from sleeping on sidewalks and parks and other public spaces under the law signed on Wednesday by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis. It also promises the homeless greater access to services for issues such as substance abuse and mental health problems. The State Department of Children and Families would oversee local governments that set up design areas for the homelessness to camp for up to 1 year under the new law, which takes effect October 1st. Anyone using those encampments would be prohibited from using alcohol, illegal drugs, with sanitation and security to be provided. It will help maintain and ensure that Florida streets are clean, Florida streets are safe for our residents. The encampments would be created if local homeless shelters reach maximum capacity, according to a news release from the governor's office. The law requires regional entities to provide necessary behavioral treatment, access as a condition of a county or city creating an encampment. Let me see. Allowing the homeless to camp in public spaces affects the quality of life, can be a nuisance for businesses, and make it more difficult to deliver the needed services because they're scattered. DeSantis and other supporters of the measure said in a news conference at Miami Beach. Of course, the place where all the tourists go, of course. Let me see here. Beginning January 2025, the law would allow residents and local businesses and local business owners and the state attorney to file a lawsuit to stop any city or county from allowing homelessness to camp and sleep on the public property. I'm sorry, let me read that properly. On the public property. So here's my thing. If a lot of these people who were in charge actually had policy that supported people so they wouldn't always end up in a space where they end up homeless, we wouldn't have the current homeless problem we have now. We have so many people who are currently unhoused because, one, rents are super high, mortgages, people got pushed out. Some people, unfortunately, come into substance abuse issues and they lose everything. Some people are military vets and have mental health issues and are not in a space where they can. There's all these different things. And my issue is a lot of these governments, and this is not even just about Florida, this is just in general, a lot of these cities and state governments cut the budgets for a lot of these services that actually help people who are battling some of these experiences that they have, right? And understand that there's not enough homeless shelters to house every person. There's not, right? And the other issue with the sheltering system is everybody has different regulations. And there's a lot of people who choose to not go to a shelter for their own safety. Understand that when we're talking sexual assault, a lot of that happens in these shelters, unfortunately, because there's not a lot of, depending on which ones that you're going to, there's not a lot of what you would say like security or the idea of ensuring that you have populations in spaces where they're appropriate. Like all of that is thrown out the window. And so we're in a space now where the only reason people are so pressed to kind of criminalize the idea of being homeless is because it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good when people are walking past and there's folks laying on the bench, right? So they do things like they'll put those studs on the benches so the people can't sit on them. They'll do all these different things, and they kind of criminalize the idea of being homeless. Now, the other piece that goes into it, some people say, well, it's a good thing because now at least if they go to jail, they'll have housing and so on and so forth. But I'm like, and what's the other thing they do with people that are in prison? Labor, right? The idea of, okay, well, let's since you want to be homeless, take these people and they get locked up, but you're going to make some license plates or you're going to go on the side of the freeway and clean trash. I think we got to get into a space to realize that, unfortunately, the United States is seriously on the decline, because when we're talking about just the rise in the homelessness population, right, it's a result of an economy that, again, has continued to widen the gap between the rich and the poor to the point where there's not really a middle class anymore. And we have a lot of people, because I think even the idea of homelessness, the image that people always have is the guy with the long beard and the two socks. They're the 3 different colors and 15 layers of coats, and they're pushing the shopping cart with a bunch of stuff in it. That's the image that most people have of what they think homeless is. But you have a lot of people who are living in their cars. You have a lot of people who still have a 9-to-5 that are homeless. I remember being an undergrad, and there were people that, you know, they lived in a dorm, but they had nowhere to go for Christmas or the holidays because they were homeless or their family was homeless back home. And so, you know, we keep the dorms open on those holiday seasons for those students. Like, there's so many layers to the conversation of homelessness. And I think this whole blanket statement of trying to police everybody, that doesn't work. I think the idea of constantly trying to criminalize people for existing, you want to fix the homeless problem? Okay, well, put more money into programs to ensure that people don't fall into a space where they're homeless. Is it going to end all homelessness? No, because one size doesn't fit all. But I don't see enough investment in programs that actually help. Now, they talk about, oh, well, we got, you know, the encouragement for them to go and support these programs, but those programs aren't funded properly. A lot of those people are short-staffed. They don't have any resources. They're overwhelmed, overbooked, don't have enough beds, right? And that's an issue that exists. So even like living in DC, which is a city that has a huge homeless population, there's not enough beds for all of these people, right? There's so many different things that affect, especially in a place like DC that's super, 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 super expensive, right? And I think we also leave out the conversation people, like I said, who have mental health issues, right? People who've been abandoned. Understanding, if you don't have health care, you can't properly manage what it is you're battling with your mental health. And eventually you start to get, I don't like to use the term worse, but eventually the whatever it is that is affecting you becomes stronger. You know, it carries a larger presence if it's not addressed, if there's no support. And so we also have people that are in that collective of people who are unhoused that are far gone, where it's not like you can just go put them in a space and they're going to be able to get a job. Because some folks are like, hey, people just need to work. And I'm like, a lot of people that are homeless have jobs. A lot of people that are homeless, you know, are in school or doing whatever it is that they need to do to get to that next step to get themselves better. But for the folks who mentally are so far gone, you know, the idea of criminalizing people who can't help it, that's the part that doesn't sit right with me at all, right? Yeah, we're in this era where people lack empathy, right? And I feel like things are only going to get worse. Like, there's so many people who are only one paycheck away, right? And the fact that we've just seen the stripping of things in healthcare, support for housing, in food assistance, like everything you can think of under the sun is just being gutted and gutted and gutted and gutted and gutted. And then you get mad because all the people start to jump into things like crime because there's no other way to support yourself because they can't land a job anywhere or whatever else is happening and so on and so forth. Or, you know, they got arrested for something when they were 17 and can't pass the background check and nobody wants to hire them. Like, it's just so much. I'm going to read some comments because I've been talking for a long time, and I got a few more topics, and then we're going to go to the lighter things because this has been somewhat of a heavy live. Yeah, somebody said, yes, all the officers have been sentenced. Let me see. Yeah, Bodie Jackson said, here in good old Alabama, the attorney general took over the case of a white convicted killer of an unarmed black man, ordered him to be released from prison. By the way, one thing I want to say too, on these videos, I always get somebody who shows up and they're like, well, black people only make up 13% of the population, but so 50% of the crime. They love to say that stat. And, you know, and I'm like, in that same token and same conversation, black people also make up 53% of the people who are exonerated. So that also plays into the question of how does the system work? Because clearly a lot of folks are being locked away, you know, and mind you, only about 4% of people get exonerated, right? So if over half of them are black folks, that should tell you something. Anyway, back to my point though, but no, yeah, you continue to see the same nonsense as far as, okay, this person being released, right? We've seen, like, think about the affluenza kid. Remember the kid that went, and I think he killed a few people being all wild and reckless. And then the justification was, well, he's never had to, you know, struggle because he was rich, so he can't help it, and they let that slide. He got probation just for him to still get in trouble. Crazy. Mm-mm-mm. And I really think with the homeless conversation too, there has to be a lot more going into rehabilitation program. Like I'm talking funding. Like they can talk a good game, but a lot of these folks, these things aren't funded the way they should be funded, right? Because it's like you want to talk a good game and paint it like you're doing a good thing, and really you're kind of throwing people out to the wolves and telling them to figure it out. If you can't figure it out, well, you'll be criminalized for it, right? So then the idea of somebody who has to go through the judicial system because they were homeless, they slept on a park bench. Let's say they're trying to get their lives together. Now when they go, well, I don't see it as a felony. I don't think it's a felony, but still, the point is the conversation of trying to get employment or qualify for different programs and stuff, if they're able to get themselves on their feet. Now they have to answer for why were you arrested this many times? Like just make it make sense. Some people, I hate to say this, but some people just need to experience it before they will really understand. Some people really need to just experience some of the things that happen with these folks, right? Get some of these wealthy people out of office. Affluenza kid killed 4 people and paralyzed somebody and got to walk. And you remember the mama went and helped hide him. Affluenza. Okay. We're about to lighten the load here. Did I get all the crazy things I wanted to cover? One other thing, Baltimore, y'all tried it as well with that $1 billion jail y'all just built. I'm like, now we remember watching kids have to sit in the classroom with coats because the schools didn't have air conditioning, right? And we saw all of the different atrocities that have taken place. Because for me, Baltimore is a very interesting city because Baltimore, to me, doesn't have a huge middle class, especially like a huge black middle class, in my opinion. It comes off very rich, and then there's very working poor. And there's a lot of people who've been left by the wayside, especially now that the city is going through the change, right? And to see what has happened with the lack of support with the schools. But y'all want to spend $1 billion on a jail, not even prison, a jail, right? This ain't even the prison for after they done cut somebody out. This is just jail. You know, understand, like when you get, if I were to go and whack somebody out in the street right now, they're sending me to jail first, right? Then if I get convicted, then I go to prison. You know, jail is just, that's the temporary spot. $1 billion for the jail. Like it's the priorities are out of whack. Same thing with Cop City and some of these places, right? Same thing with Alabama spending what they were going to spend on prisons. The money is out of whack. They're not, all the money is going in all the things that don't matter. Invest in the people and the crime will go down. It's not going to fix all the crime, but it definitely will remedy some of the issues that we're seeing. And it's like, y'all don't want to fix anything. You strip away every freaking thing. You got education, you got resources, you got opportunities, you got this, you got that, you got this program, got this scholarship program, cut Pell Grants, cut everything under the sun. And then you get mad at people who respond in a way that is not to your liking because they've run out of options. I don't think people understand if you're on the end of the spectrum where you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you could give 2 F words about keeping other people comfortable, right? Some people just need to experience this in real time. They need to experience some of that. Like, come on. Somebody said, do I think Trump will post his bond tomorrow? That's a good question. If he does, it's because somebody gave it to him. That'd be interesting. I wonder what they're going to snatch away if he doesn't. That's going to be interesting as well. Okay, I think I have covered all the heavy stuff. Let me look at my title and make sure I didn't skip anything real quick. Because I always be getting the big stuff and be skipping stuff. Hold on. What's in my title? Did I get everything in the title? Well, I know I didn't get everything in the title, but I want to make sure I got the heavy stuff. Quite want to say, oh, I got to talk about Keith Murray. Okay. What else? Keith Murray. Okay, Keith Murray, really quick. So, if you remember, Keith Murray was this rapper that was really popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. Actually, mid-90s. I'll give him mid-90s, right? I'm not sure what his journey is, but from what I've seen, it looks like he is trying to figure out life. He might be battling some substance abuse problems. It looks like his money is funny. I don't know if he's homeless or not, but there is somebody on the internet who caught him on video and decided they were going to record him, you know, at a motel while he's just minding his business. He's not doing anything. He's not bothering anybody. He's living his life. And so there's this person who's like recording him and trying to confirm, are you Keith Murray, right? You're Keith Murray. And he's kind of like, can you stop recording me? She's like, no, just answer the question, right? I want people to get out of the habit of thinking that clout at the expense of people's livelihood and their well-being is a good thing to brag on, right? The idea of, oh, let me be the first. I got the scoop for y'all. Guess who I saw, at some $30 a night hotel or motel? Keith Murray. Yeah, and he needed $20. That's the part that pissed me off. She asked him, did he need money? I think he said he needed $20. And then it was kind of like, well, you can't get it unless you, talk to the camera. Like, some of y'all are some horrible people. Not y'all, because I feel like if you rock with me, you're probably a wonderful person. Not to sound cocky, but I'm saying some of these people are terrible. You know what I mean? Like, we're already in a space where people want to bring out cameras for everything anyway. But the idea of exploiting someone, and what it is I think people have an obsession with seeing the mighty fall, right? Because we're in the space of worshiping celebrity and celebrity wealth and everything. When celebrities fall off or their money is funny or they're homeless, people love to harp in and run, and it's a great time, right? Think of all the jokes that came when Toni Braxton filed for bankruptcy the second time, right? The jokes that came for T-Boz when she filed for medical bankruptcy or bankruptcy as a result of her medical condition for that second time. Like, think of the jokes that come, right? People enjoy seeing the downfall of some of these celebrities. But I think when it gets to a point where people are, and I think people need to also understand, in the same realm, these people are human, right? Toni had to file for bankruptcy the second time because of her condition, and she had to cancel the Vegas residency, and it was the insurance went back, and so she got sued. So that's why she had to file the second time. T-Boz had a whole brain tumor, right? The medical expenses at that point, she couldn't cover them because she was only bringing in about $1,200 a month from royalties from TLC at that point in time. This is before they started touring and stuff again. So it's just like, understand these people run into situations that a lot of us run into, but the idea of trying to expose somebody who's down bad, and there's nothing you technically gain from it. You just get the point that it was you that recorded. Oh, y'all know I was the one who recorded that, right? People are weird, right? Even like the whole idea with like the Stan Wars and how you see people sometimes, they've become so vile with their appreciation for some celebrities that the celebrities that they don't like, they become really crazy about and do things and stalk and have whole hate pages and make hate videos. Just, we're in a weird era. Very, very weird. All right, let me go to my comment sections here. Charlene said being homeless is not easy. It's not, right? At all. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. A mess. Let me see. Yeah, I'm coming to Freaknik in a second, Alan. Yes, $1 billion for a jail. Think of what that could have gone to, especially in a place like Baltimore, right? And I'm highlighting Baltimore because remember, Baltimore at one point was an industrial city. When America's industrial industry collapsed, all the cities that were industrial cities fell victim to that. Detroit, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cleveland, right? These places that, or East St. Louis and St. Louis, like places that were booming, had booming economies. And as our factories started falling and failing because we busted all the unions and they started outsourcing jobs and tech came in and everything, a lot of people got left by the wayside. So it's just like, you would think that if you had $1 billion to invest, why didn't you invest it in the people? That's all I'm saying, man. Yes, Mia Campbell. Who said that? That exactly. Charlene, I remember they did that to Mia Campbell back in the day. Yeah, that clip of her outside, and there used to be clip after clip, and then these stupid blogs, Shade Room. Well, I don't even think it was Shade Room. It would have been like Media Takeout back then, or what was that girl, Sandra Rose? That was that blog there. Some people are just, the idea of basking in being a horrible person. But yeah, those blogs had a field day with that, right? Crazy. Gary, Indiana. Yes, Milwaukee. Like the cameras, I told you that time I didn't end up fighting the person, but I was arguing with this couple in the grocery store, and then when I looked to my right, there was somebody with the. I was like, oh dang, okay, let me calm down. I'm not about to be on here fighting. Yeah, I was about to see Calvin wrecking it at Harris Teeter a few years ago, but no. So yeah, that's the Keith Murray bit. I think people need to have a bit more grace. Okay, that is all the heavy stuff. I can finally come back to the light things. Okay, we're gonna end on a good note tonight because Lord, hot mess. First thing, this actually made me laugh. I saw this was going viral. I saw the clip where there was the professor or the teacher that gave the challenge to the class where for the final, all they had to do, either they were going to do a 15,000 word essay or do a 15-second dance. Now understand, 15,000 words is probably about 30 pages single spaced, okay? 12 font, Times New Roman, right? Or 60 double spaced, right? And so when I saw the clip, only one person in the class chose to do the dance. I said, what's wrong with, everybody else said they do the paper. I was like, y'all are, okay, look, I'm not trying to sound like the typical Negro, but I would have had a full routine in there. I would have done something, Rhythm Nation, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I would have been ready. I would have had the stereo system. I would have got a group together. If you think I'm about to spend time doing a 30-page paper when all I got to do is a 15-second dance, as a former choreographer, that is literally maybe an 8.5 count, maybe 2 8 counts, right? And the professor didn't even say it had to be anything intricate. You could do anything. So the person that I saw, they did something with a flip and something else, and they were done. And like, all I know is if I was them, I would have did my little flip, took a bow, thank you, and I would have went on out and enjoyed the rest of my day. Y'all sitting here and do that paper. Crazy. It reminds me, I remember when I was at Howard, I don't remember the class. I know it was Dr. Cummings, but I don't remember what class it was. For her course, you had to sing all 3 verses of Lift Every Voice and Sing as an assignment. Like I did it, but I almost missed class on my day that I was supposed to go. But no, that was actually fun to do. But the only part, she was like judging you based on how you sang too. I was like, damn, like you had to really be serious. And it was kind of cool because like people in the class that were doing it, because they did it over the course of a few days. Some folks were in there singing down. I was like, I love us. I love us. We still had to do other work, but that was one of the assignments. But yeah, 15,000 word essay or a 15-second dance. Now, see, that's when I don't take myself that seriously. I have no problem doing a 15-second dance if it means I don't have to spend, the next 3 or 4 days working on a paper. Crazy. But no, please check out that clip if you see it. And it was funny because social media, everybody started posting what they would have been doing. So folks were like posting like different clips of just random dances. Oh, I would have been in there having me a time. Hell, you could have just went up there and did the electric. If you can't dance, you could did the electric slide, did whatever. I don't know. Crazy. Okay, Freaknik. So, I did watch the Freaknik documentary. You don't got to worry about spoilers. I don't have much to say. It was okay. I really didn't know what to expect because I didn't think it was a documentary that was needed to begin with, right? But it does highlight, the events that took place in the late 80s going in through the 90s, specifically in Atlanta. Interesting documentary. I'm not sure what to make of it. I don't know. It was interesting. I think there's some good parts in there. I think there's some parts that also open up further discussion, right? But I will say what I found interesting. I think a lot of you probably saw that post with the one person who was like, Gen X and millennials better never say nothing else about Gen Z again because I watched that Freaknik documentary and you should be ashamed. And I'm like, you mixing up the generations. Like, look, in the documentary, they said the best year of Freaknik was 94. I was in kindergarten. Okay, I was sitting on the numbered carpet singing Kumbaya and all around the mulberry bush. And the more we get together, I wasn't in Freaknik. I was like 6. Like I wasn't there, right? And then even when they talk about the rougher years, like 98, where there's these sexual assaults and stuff coming. I was playing baseball. I was in Europe. I was on the baseball team. I wasn't there, but I was like, okay, yeah, y'all just got all the generations mixed up. Even the oldest millennials would have only been 16 or 17 by the time that ended. And there are, I'm sure there were teenagers in the Atlanta metro that probably snuck out from school, whatever, and were there. But when you're talking about what took place, that was the adults. Okay, so yeah, wrong generation, folks. But no, the documentary is on. Was it on Hulu or HBO Max? It was on one of those two. It was okay. I felt like it kind of got rushed. Like the details are there, but I'm not sure. I feel like it could have been 3 different kind of documentaries. One could have been the idea of like those golden years, 94, 95, the celebratory this, the celebratory that, college students finding a refuge and a space to go to because there weren't a lot of spaces for them. Another could have been more so centered specifically on all of the sexual assault and all the other stuff like that. Another could have been more centered on like the politics around it. But I think by them trying to do all 3, some bits got more attention than others. So it doesn't come off thorough to me. And then even when I saw 21 Savage in it, I'm like, what's he doing in it? I'm older than him. But okay, interesting. Yeah, check it out if you want to. I didn't really know what to make of it. I wasn't sure what the end goal was. Sometimes I get people say, well, it's all about just encapsulating our experiences and archiving things. So, I'll give it that. But it's still an interesting watch, but I think it does open larger conversations. Now, I will say, I don't think it's something you can successfully bring back. I think there are things where it worked for those eras, and sometimes we have to let things just be in those eras, right? And so like, you know, it's kind of like, what's a perfect example? I'm trying to think of a good example of this. So, you know, they tried to bring TRO back a few times, and there were talks at one point to bring back 106 in Park. And like I said, those worked in their respective eras when the structure of how we consumed entertainment was different, right? When YouTube did not exist. So you had to sit and watch music networks and pray that you would see your favorite video, right? Or you voted to get your favorite video. And like, it made sense then. Today, that doesn't work because we have free reign to watch whatever we want, when we want to, at, you know, in the palm of our hand. But I feel like if you want to do some kind of music related content show, the only way that you're going to get an audience is it has to be centered on live performances. If it's only centered on playing music videos, nobody's going to watch because we can just go to YouTube, right? But if you center it on interviews and live performances, I'm sure you can build an audience. Like, look at NPR's Tiny Desk, right? Really popular because people like to see performances. Tiny Desk is not something that you can just go YouTube randomly. You can YouTube the Tiny Desk performance, but before they make that performance, there's no other clips of them in that room with their makeshift band performing, right? You have to create something that works for that era. So TRL 106 in Park worked in the era of life before YouTube and life before social media and life before the internet would become what it became, right? And I think with Freaknik, it's that same kind of thing. That can't work today because everybody got camera phones out, right? Or got iPhones. I think that's why a lot of folks felt relaxed, like, whoa, thank God. A lot of folks didn't have cameras, and all you had was a wind up in a Polaroid and maybe a video camera. So a lot of folks slept good at night because they weren't worried about being in a documentary, right? So it's like that kind of thing. But so I feel like something like that, let it be a thing of that era. You know what I mean? I would rather people come up with new things that work for this modern space. I love nostalgia, but nostalgia can't be the driving force behind everything we do, right? So that's that with Freaknik. Interesting documentary, but I've seen better documentaries. I wasn't too crazy over that one. If you want to talk about like a festival that I thought had a great documentary, I thought Summer of Soul was really, really good. We actually did a review on that one. It's somewhere on this channel. Just check my playlist that says reviews. All right. Let me see here. Let's read some comments. Oh, yes. Zebralands, Jeffrey Owens, Melvin from Cosby Show. People tried to joke on him. Remember, because let me read your comment first. I got excited. I'm sorry. People tried to joke on him simply because he was working for a paycheck. He was making an honest living, but people think you fell off if they see you out. Because remember, he was a cashier and people had the pictures and everything. I'm like, y'all are some evil people. And to that point, if we're talking Hollywood, especially for actors, understand the work is not consistent. If you don't have a picture deal, the work is not consistent. And sadly, for a lot of actors who get the luxury of being on a top-rated sitcom, they're almost kind of typecast to the point where nobody wants to put them on anything else because when you see them, you only think of Elvin, right? On the show, right? That kind of works against folks. So think about like a Gary Coleman, right? Sadly, he's passed, but think about after Different Strokes ends. He still wanted to work, but they're like, no, that's what you're talking about. So no, we can't put him on anything. So yeah, he'd do a guest spot here, like on the Parkers or something. But you know, he kind of came into a space where things kind of fell apart for him. I remember he ran for governor of California at one point. But yeah, the work is not consistent for a lot of people. A lot of people who were favorites on some of these sitcoms that are beloved. The bigger the sitcom, it's like the worse it is for them when the show is over, right? I just saw the actress that's on Euphoria that plays the mom, and how she was talking about she hadn't made her rent in 6 months. For actors, even though there's the union and SAG and all that other stuff, there's not consistency with work if you don't have some kind of picture deal, if you're not locked into a sitcom. So yeah, a lot of folks have to take on additional work to stay afloat, right? And especially in this era where streaming has come in, and this is important because understand that a lot of shows that were once in syndication on television are no longer on television because they're on one of the streaming services, and actors are not getting the same rates that they were getting from television. And for the Cosby Show specifically, understand that when everything happened with Bill Cosby, remember the network started yanking. Nick at Night yanked the Cosby Show off. I think there was one or two other networks that yanked it, and I think at this point the only network that plays the Cosby Show is TV One. I don't have TV One anymore because YouTube TV doesn't have it. But understand that means those residual checks have gotten smaller. I don't know if Cosby's on the streaming services, but even if it is, the checks are smaller. So those are things to think about when people try to get in people's face. Like, oh yeah, I'm like, at least he's working, right? And then actually gave him new opportunities. So anyway, Somebody said they'll do the Harlem Shake. Look, in that class, I would have been ready. But they might have had to sit me down. I might have did 30 seconds for extra credit. Anyway, yeah. Let's see here. Somebody said I didn't know Don Cheadle had an internet channel. You know, it's funny. That especially when I had short hair, that's the person I get compared to the most. I don't see it. Other than us both having these big foreheads and maybe the same kind of nose, I don't see it. But okay. Other than that, that's fine. Don Cheadle is an excellent actor. All right. Yeah, 21 Savage, his family's from the UK. Harold said there's a documentary on YouTube. MTV covered Freaknik in '98 and it's been posted on YouTube. Personally, I find it more informative than what Hulu gave us. Some of those Hulu documentaries don't be hitting right. That one they did on Britney Spears, I didn't like. That one they did on Janet, I didn't like either. Yeah. Somebody said, yeah, they crammed 15 years into 80 minutes. Like some of these things just, I feel like you got to really expound. I feel like a lot of people have been cutting corners with some of these biopics and some of these documentaries. Some of these things need to be a series, right? Zeberlin said those students follow the herd mentality, afraid to stand out and want to go with the majority, afraid to be unique. I think that's about the student stance. And that kind of goes back to, there's a thing called the spiral of silence theory, where if there's a group of people in a room, a lot of times, if everybody has an understood collective thought, but one person has something different, a lot of times that person will not say anything because they don't want to go against the grain. They don't want to shake up the space. So they'll kind of just stay silent and ride into whatever it is. So like if it's like the classroom of 25 kids and the teacher said, okay, well, what pizza do you guys want? Because you guys did really good with your reading assignment. Do you want pepperoni or do you want sausage or do you want cheese? There might be everybody in the class wanted pepperoni, but one person wants a pineapple pizza. Because that person knows nobody else wants a pineapple pizza, they'll just shut up and be happy with the pepperoni and just go with the flow. So yeah, it's that works in just how we as humans interact in general. Let me see. It's already midnight? Lord. Well, I did start late. That's why we're going to wind this down soon. Okay. I was also expecting a little bit more. Poison Ivy said, you see what happened when they tried to bring back Woodstock. Yeah, because they tried the one in 94. That one was in. And then they did it again in 99. And that's a documentary to watch. Now, that's some wild stuff. People are nasty. I thought the mud that they were throwing at Woodstock 99 was mud. That was mud, piss, vomit, feast. And I mean, folks were laying in it and Yeah, Jesus. And then what was crazy, the mud was so thick that they had to walk through. Like it was hard to walk. And then they're out in the scorching sun with no shade. And people who had all that mud on them, like it burned their skin and people had infections and the porta potties were all overflowed and there was no toilet paper. There was no water. That's a documentary to watch. Whoever did that documentary got all the scoop. Like, man, crazy. All right. And they tried to bring back Woodstock in like 2019. I don't know if they were successful with it. I think it got canceled. It didn't happen. I think COVID showed up too, so it was kind of like a never mind. We changed our minds. Thank you, JBuggin88. Where I live, there's someone with a Facebook page that shames the homeless. He got an RV kicked out of Sam's Club. They just go around taking pics of the homeless. I live in a college town in, I want to say, is that Montana? Montana's MO, right? Or is that Missouri? Missouri's MI. I gotta make sure I got these things right. Which Montana? Montana abbreviation. I want to make sure I got this right. Montana's MT. So that's MO should be Missouri. Let me see. Look. I don't want a geography be champ. Want a geography be and can't remember. Yeah, MO's Missouri. Okay. Yeah, that's terrible. I think I don't know. Now that we have an entire generation of people who have been born into social media and don't know the world before it, I think we've really got into a space where a lot of people don't even understand nuance, right? Everything is in the moment. I know when I was still with my teenagers, I used to have to remind them that you don't need to take a phone out with everything. I had one kid get fired from their job because their boss was having a meltdown and they recorded it and put it on, I don't know if they put it on Snapchat or something, but either way, it spread amongst that cohort and got back to the boss and they got fired. Man. Okay. We got a few additional things we still need to talk about. All right. Let's see. Oh, Justin Timberlake. I listened to the album because, like I said, even though I don't like a lot of folks, I still will. When all the releases come out on Friday, when I'm getting ready for work on Friday, or actually I work at home on Fridays, but when I'm doing like whatever work on Fridays, I will give all of the new releases by people that I recognize or people that folks have buzzed up a shot. Every last, well, probably not Taylor Swift because I'm just not into her like that, but everybody else I will normally give a shot to, right? Justin was one where I wasn't pressed about it, but I was like, well, let me listen, because as much as he gets on my nerves, every now and then he has a song that I did like as much as he gets a lot of smoke from me, Rock Your Body is one of my favorite songs. I just hate the circumstances in which that song is now associated with, right? I couldn't stand him in 06, but damn it, when Sexy Back came out, that was my ish, right? But anyway, getting to my point. So I was like, let me listen to the album. The album for me, it was okay. It was a little long. And my thing is, if you have a long album, then it needs to take you somewhere. The album to me just sounds dated. It sounds like something you'd hear in 2006. Kind of like what I said with the J-Lo album, where I felt like that J-Lo album that just came out would have worked, in 2005, 2006, but a lot of the songs don't really fit right now. But as far as Justin, him working with Timberland, I feel like Timberland sometimes plateaus himself sonically. And I think with the Justin album, I will say the one Justin song that I thought was really, really good on that album, and it's only because it reminds me of Prince. Let me see what it was called. Let me see. But yeah, I was good on this album. I was like, I needed some up tempos. He got a few on there, but everybody is in this space of all mid tempos. I'm like, I don't mind mid tempos, but they got to be good. Love and War. I think was it Love and War? I think it's that one. Let me see. I can't play it because I'm not fighting with YouTube. I ain't got time. Yeah, I think it's Love and War. It's a song that sounds very Prince-ish, right? That was the one song I like, and then yeah, there's a few other songs that's okay, but nah. And y'all sized it up because I was reading on Twitter, everybody's like, he has a better album than what Usher put out. Because like I said with Usher's was cool too, but there's a few songs I probably would have taken off. I just needed a few more songs. But like I told you, I love Kissing Strangers. I love that song. But yeah, sorry, I think Usher won that battle as far as who had the better album. And then Janet, you lucky you told us to let it go, because I told y'all when we watched that documentary, and remember there was that random piece in the documentary that you knew wasn't a part of the documentary. We've been watching all this stuff, and then out of nowhere you see Janet, and you can tell she done shot this on the phone. Hey, you guys, Justin and I were friends. We've moved on. Let it go. And every Janet fan would like shaking watching. What? Fine, if you say so. Whatever. I get it. At some point, it's 20 plus years ago. She wants to move on. I will respect it. So I've decided to not lash him as much in response to Janet, but I can still do it for Prince. But no, the album, I did watch some of the Tiny Desk. It was okay. But the critique I always had for Justin just knows who to surround himself with. He always knows how to get the right people around him. He does have a talent. He doesn't do a lot for me. I don't see him as somebody that's innovative. I see him as somebody that knows how to work what's out there. Works for some folks. It's not my go-to. He has some bops. Rocky Body might come on and I'm bopping my head and singing along. But that's all I got for him. But I'm good on Justin. I just don't think he is a great person. And I have my reasonings. You can go to that video I did where not only did we just talk about the Super Bowl, but the fact that he continued to mock and drag Janet for years and years about it. Like that, for me, yeah. And then even when he was promoting this and he was performing, I don't remember what song, and he said the whole bit about I owe an apology to no one. Oh, so you still, okay. Cool. Enjoy. I won't be on that train. Let me read some comments here. Yeah, I want to move on. I was like, Janet, okay, she's so nice. She's just nice. I get it. But I'm throwing hands. F all that. All right. If he didn't do the diss record, I would have almost let him slide. But when he had that line about missed you on the charts last week, that's right, you wasn't there. Well, part of that is your fault. Right? Could you speak up a little louder? You didn't come in clear, just wanted to clear the air. Oh, okay. Now you want to make fun of her being soft-spoken. Okay. All right. Okay. Anyway. I got to finish the Tyler album. I haven't heard it all, but it's a fun album. what did I think of the new Regina King movie? I was actually doing a separate review, separate from the live, but I did see it. I actually got to see it before it came to Netflix because, you know, DC has E Street Cinema, which is like the independent theater. And so the movie had a limited release. So I saw it last week. I'm going to say this. There's a part in the end that just, it hurt me so, it cut me so deep. I did not expect a certain thing to happen. I was like, are you serious? Now, the other thing I will say is I didn't realize that the campaign was doing so badly the entire time. From what I always understood, I always thought, like, I knew she didn't win or didn't even have a shot at the nomination, but I didn't realize it was that bad. I thought like she had a viable shot, like she might have been like top 3. I didn't realize it was that far in the trenches. But I'm happy to see Regina King is kind of reemerging. That has to be tough to bury a child, especially a child that, you know, when they're an adult and everything, and they're at a space where, and I think I said this on, I don't know if I said this on my live or if I said this when I did the Sandy's show, where I was saying I love the phase that I'm in right now with my mom, where it's like we can laugh and joke, right? You know, she's still my mom, but now it's that transition into adulthood where your parents become your friends. I love this era, so I hate that that's her experience. That has to be really tough. But yeah, it's an interesting movie. I think people should still watch. I think it kind of paints the picture of just what the climate was like at that time. And it's crazy because after all that nonsense and some of the foolery that happened in the end, Nixon still won and literally swept the 72 election. I think Nixon's election in 72 looks like Reagan's election in freaking 1980. He literally, like, remember Reagan got like all the states except for one. And then I think we can pull this up. Let me see here. Hold on, let me go to Nixon first. Nixon 72. Let me get that map. Nixon got he got every state except Massachusetts and DC. Look, the whole map is red, right? Lord, what were y'all doing in 1972, right? And let me go to 80. Let me go to Reagan. Oh boy, if this 2024 election came out there, y'all would never see. I might be on the respirator after that. Reagan in 80 got every state except Minnesota, West Virginia, Georgia, Maryland. What is this? Rhode Island and DC. Like, look. Hold on, let me get my map here. Look at this. Like, these are some serious elections here. Like, Reagan was in here cleaning house on folks. And then he did it again at the next election. I think the next one, it was like all the states except for, I want to say Wisconsin. Let's find out. Yep. Oh, not Wisconsin, Minnesota. Sorry. Every state except Minnesota. What were y'all doing back then? Anyway, wild time. But no, I thought it was an interesting movie. And there's a line in there, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a line that definitely paints the picture of U.S. politics even today, where towards the end, Shirley Chisholm asks a question about a specific group that wasn't represented, like that wasn't really showing up. And I'm like, yeah, and that same group is still tripping today, 53%. That's all I'll say. Anyway. Who is this? Thank you, Nerd Lars. I guarantee Beth Hardison Kadim's mom, Hulu Doc / or is greater than the Freaknik one. Also, thoughts on what's going to happen with the Wiz / Caps and their supposed move. It's falling apart. The Wizards are going to be staying in DC. They're not going nowhere because the Virginia State Senate House, whatever that is, no, they're like, we're not going to keep letting you billionaires keep promising us that you're going to give us these opportunities, but then we have to pay for it and subsidize it for you. So I don't see that happening. And then on top of that, there's also this other claim that's coming out saying that based on the contract with some of the renovations and things that took place in 2007, the Wizards weren't allowed to move from this area for like until 2057 anyway. So I think that's all falling apart. The stuff had already failed in the state house in Virginia. And also the only other thing I could see is the owner actually just pulling them out of DC period and going somewhere else. But I don't see that happening either. But you know, there's that. Oh, side note, speaking of sports, this is the first year I finally did a bracket. Every year I'd always forget to do my bracket, even though my bracket's already jacked up. The two teams I got going to the final two is Gonzaga and UConn. And if they get to the tiebreaker round, it's 106-105 for UConn. That's my guess, but I'm probably wrong. We'll see. So anyway, let me see here. Poison Ivy says, "Stay out of this, Janet. Respectfully, it's still F. Justin." That's where I'm at. Like, Janet, when you go ahead and we'll let you sleep, but let Justin say something else I don't like. I'll be right back on him. Anyway, yeah, and then them Britney fans wouldn't let him have it. Them Britney fans are dragging him. I didn't even know all the Britney stuff like that, but they weren't having it. Brandon Davis, I'm not even mad at you. Somebody here, I'm gonna help you real quick, Brandon Davis. Give me 1 sec. He was asking, "Where's the Mariah doc?" All right. This is our Mariah doc, guys. Lord, look at page after page after page. All of this is Mariah. Mariah. I gotta film all of this. Okay. Mariah is kicking my behind, but it's so good. I'm gonna tell you that now. But Lord, y'all pray my strength. We're almost there. It's just that filming it has taken so long because there's so much to share, right? The next So What Happened I'm doing will not be an artist as big as Mariah. Like, I'm going to somebody who only had about 2 or 3 albums, because Mariah got too many accolades to go through, and there was so many layers with Glitter and what happened with Rainbow and how that was kind of just a contractual obligation. And there's some great discussions in there, though, but I'm not going to spoil it. But it should be out before the end of April. Hopefully. Like, man, I've been really putting the work in trying to do that. And then still trying to run a channel. So I don't even fault anyone who is mad because they've been waiting patiently. I thank you for it. It's coming. It will be worth the wait. It might be the longest one we've done. So I know some of you don't like the super long videos. I don't know if I want to just release it in separate parts. No, I just put it all in one big piece. Y'all waited long enough. But yeah. So Mariah's almost here, guys. Just bear with me. I was just, busy doing a movie and other projects and things all at the same time. And the hardest thing too, like when you're filming these, because especially if you film, like when I did the Janet one, it took me 2 weeks to film the Janet one. Your hair grows, right? And so like when I first started, like all of this was all tapered and all. It ain't tapered now, so you're gonna watch the hair grow, or because you don't film it all in one day. Or like today, I didn't really do a whole lot with it, but there's some days where it's like you done put the juices and berries and the curls are defined and hanging, and then there's some days where like you're trying to make it all look the same, like you shot it all in the same day. So that's why I used to just wear that yellow like Scully, just have this little piece hanging out the front, but I couldn't find the Scully. But anyway. Man. Not y'all saying they was doing crack back then. I am not even gonna laugh at that. I'm not laughing at that. I remember one time, my good friend Tanae, her and her godmom were having like this argument because godmom was like, "Yeah, y'all don't know how to party like we used to party back in the day. Y'all something. Y'all just tripping." And she was like, "Well, yeah, that's because all y'all had was great Kool-Aid and crack." I was like, "Oh." But it was funny the way that it came out, to just for who that person was, because that person talks so much trash. But I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not laughing at that. But I was like, not great Kool-Aid and crack. Y'all are terrible people. I just want y'all to know that. Man, somebody said the country was bleeding. Yes, it certainly was. Oh, yes, I did H-Lee. Shout out to that channel. Black Music Archives is such a great channel for those who like music and everything. That's the channel that does the videos that go and do the deep dives on people's voices. I had been watching the Whitney one. I was waiting for that third part. So I will say this, like sometimes when I see like people like Black Music Archives or like Lectual Media or Black Femininity or some of these other folks that come out with these great docs, I'm like, damn, you need to move faster because they be dropping these things like this and you be taking your sweet time making people wait a year for things they've been asking for. Because right at the same time, I'm also doing a New Jack Swing doc. So it's like, man, yeah. So after the New Jack Swing doc and the Mariah doc, y'all will never know what I'm doing. It's just going to come out. So we don't even have it. Just be surprise, because I ain't telling y'all nothing else. Man, but no, that Whitney one was really great. He does an excellent job of researching. So I commend people who really like put the art of just effort in their craft. Okay. Shifting gears. I did see And I still think this would be a cool idea. I saw the conversation around Brandy and Monica, right? Ray J was saying he wanted them to kind of do a joint tour together. I'm not going to address what he said, but or how he said it. I still like the idea. People were having these conversations of who would open and who would, would Brandy be the headliner, would Monica be the headliner? Folks were having these debates over who had the more successful career. My thing is, I think it would be dope, and it's not going to happen, but if it does, that would be really dope. They should do a joint tour where the show is intertwined, right? And because they have 2 songs that they've done together already, they can open with It All Belongs to Me. I know a lot of people didn't like the song, but you know what? When it's in concert and they're singing everybody down and got the dancers and the lasers and the water and the smoke, it'd be cool. They can open with that, and then they can keep switching and going and doing their different songs. And Brandy does some songs and leaves the stage, and Monica does some, and this, that, and third. Maybe they do some covers together, and you just make it this full intertwined show. And then at the end, they close with The Boy Is Mine, Thank You, Good Night. And then the opening act could be somebody who's up and coming. So maybe like a Victoria Monet who's had a really great year. This would be great for her to even build a bigger audience, or maybe even bring out one of the people who were one of their peers of that era. Or Maya kind of falls in that category of being their peer, but she came a few years later. Maya could open if she was up to it. And this is not saying that Maya has to be the opener because her career wasn't as big as the others. I'm just trying to keep the nostalgia of the acts that were around at the same time together. That's all. So please don't take that as me being shady. We love Maya. But I feel like that would be a cool tour. It would be a great show, right? Monica has all these bops and these classics. Brandy has these bops and these classics. And for a lot of people, their music has been able to transcend through generations. So now even like a lot of Gen Z kids and even Generation Alpha are very familiar with both of their catalogs and a lot of their songs. So I think that would be a dope show. Now, Monica's currently on the Nicki Minaj tour, and from what I've seen, it looks like the show's doing really, really well. So Monica's booked right now. I'm not sure what Brandy's up to. I know she had the Holiday album, but who knows? Maybe they'll do something together, or maybe they won't because they're tired of people pitting them against each other all the time. And maybe that's an environment that would create a space where the fan base is in there fighting in the parking lot after the show. So who knows? All right. Let me read the comments here. Somebody said, I like long videos when they're worth it. This would be worth it. There are vloggers and other content creators that constantly put out long videos, and I don't have the time. I don't know how y'all be sitting through these 3-hour lives with me sometimes, because I just be sitting here talking because I just know I'm going to bed when I'm done, but I appreciate it. Somebody said, I still need a satin bonnet, my brother. Protect your curls. Actually, I don't judge. I got one. I got one. I be forgetting to put it on. I don't like stuff touching my forehead when I sleep because I'm afraid I'm going to break out. Because if you remember the old chat, if you remember the channel years ago, I've always battled with really bad acne. The only stuff I battle with now is just from shaving. Sometimes you get that ingrown hair. When you have naturally curly hair, it also affects here too. And sometimes it curls under the skin instead of growing out. So sometimes I got a little spot right here that I'm waiting to go away. Right. But yeah, back in the day, this was connect the dots on every video. And I had a different camera, different lighting. So it was really, because it was a bit more contrast, it was really highlighted to. So I get self-conscious about that, but I got a bonnet. I ain't too cool for that. I ain't ashamed. I'd be right there knocked out. You'll never see me in it. You'll never see me in it, but I got one. I've been knocked out. Because some people say do like the satin pillowcases, but your skin can't breathe, and then I break out here. So I'm like, nope. Because I already have very pronounced cheekbones. So if I break out on them, it's very obvious. Anyway, let me see. Somebody says you need a YouTube membership or Patreon. I just was having this conversation today with one of my friends, Azaria, where she was saying you need to start one. I kept saying I would do one if I was more consistent on YouTube. It's so hard for me to come in front of people and either charge or ask for things. Even when we were funding for the movie, me and the director fought because I was like, I'm not going on YouTube asking these people for money. We ended up doing it and it helped. So I appreciate those who helped donate, but it was a fight because I was like, I don't want to be seen as somebody who's like, oh, he's a scammer. He's always out here begging, which is why I don't really ask y'all for anything. All I ask is just support what I put out and go from there. But Patreon, who knows? We'll see. I'm leaning because I also want to make sure I don't have all my eggs in one basket. It could be any day where YouTube is like, Calvin, you be shaking the table too much. You got to go. And then this is gone. And even though I have other platforms, it's like this is the bread and butter right now. But we'll see. Somebody said, what did Ray J say? He was pretty much just saying that, Brandy would headline, Monica would be the opener, and this other stuff. And I get it. It's his sister. He's going to size up what his sister does. But I don't like the idea of downplaying Monica. I get it. Brandy commercially is the bigger artist globally when you put together all the sales and everything. But Monica has had a very, very great run, right? Monica, let's remember, 98 Monica had 3 #1 singles in 1 year. Angel of Mine, Not the First Night, and The Boy Is Mine. Let's also not play in Monica's face. I'm only doing all this because I'm a fan of both. I've always enjoyed both of them a lot. So yeah. Let's see. Angel R said, there are so many untalented people from other communities that don't have a problem doing that. You are actually giving information and contributing something of value. If I can just be consistent, sure, for Patreon. But right now, I think my rate at this point is usually about maybe 1 video a week, possibly. This has been I've been a little bit more active in the last month, just trying to be on top of things, because I noticed that because I've been so busy with everything else, the channel's been taking a hit as far as me not putting out content. So I was like, let me hop on it, right? Let's see. Yeah, that Mariah doc has. I can share with y'all. Let me see what's on one of these pages. What's on here worth looking at? I had a portion on here where I was talking about just how crazy, and this is, I'm not going to spoil it all, but there's a portion that goes into the conversation of people always talk about Mariah helping to popularize the idea of pop artists collaborating with rap artists. And there's a segment in there, actually it's in the beginning too, where I kind of go through the origins of how we even got to that. So we go way back to the 1970s and we start with the group Sequence. And at some point we end up in 95 with the Fantasy. So it's all that. But there's a part where I talk about just how crazy the hits were in 95, as far as just what was going on, right? But we can start. So 95 opens with Boyz II Men, and they're #1 for 3 weeks, right? With On Bended Knee. And then right after that, TLC is #1 for 4 weeks with Creep. And then right after that, Madonna's #1 for 7 weeks with Take a Bow. And then Montel Jordan's #1 for another 7 weeks with This Is How We Do It. And then Byron Adams, I think it's like Have You Ever Loved a Woman, something like that. #1 for 5 weeks. And then TLC #1 again for 7 weeks with Waterfalls. And then still #1 for a week with Kiss from a Rose. Then Coolio, 3 weeks, Gangsta's Paradise. Then Mariah shows up with Fantasy for 8 weeks, right? Then Whitney Houston. And then it's interesting because it gets into the conversation of now we're getting these crazy, crazy debuts because a whole bunch of stuff happened, right? One of the first things is Janet debuts at #6 with Runaway, which at that point was the highest debut for any female artist on the Billboard Hot 100. And then before Janet could even celebrate, look at me, what's up, Mariah debuts at #1 with Fantasy, right? And then while Fantasy's having this run, then Whitney drops Shoot, and Shoot goes #1 for a week. And then the reason Shoot didn't get to stay #1 for too long was because then One Sweet Day went to #1 the next week. It's a whole bunch of layers. But anyway, I said all that to say, I go into details of how the industry was structured and how it created a space where Mariah could become the artist that would help to popularize that. But we also give credit to where credit is due with other artists that have kind of done that before, more so in the R&B realm. But the argument was more so highlighting that at the time, Mariah was really pushed as a pop artist at this point. I said that she kind of sits on a seesaw that has 3 sides. And it's similar to what it is with Toni Braxton. Like Toni Braxton, if you were to put her on a seesaw, the left side is the adult contemporary market. The right side is the pop market. The middle is R&B. That's her base. That's all. No matter where she goes, her foundation will always be R&B. For Mariah, in my opinion, it was R&B on one side, adult contemporary on the other. And until about the Butterfly era, pop was that middle piece. So no matter where they moved with singles, it was always pop. And so because she had the leverage and the luxury of the machine that we call pop behind her, she was one of the handful of artists that could do what she did as far as working with ODB and a label not being terrified and actually pushing it, right? Another time, save it for the documentary. I gave you enough. That was the snippet. All right. That's something I should have put on a Patreon if I had one, right? Anyway. Let me see. Kayla said 11,000 subscribers when I found you. Cool. I think that's probably about 2018, I think. Teddy, hey, have you been seeing the new insults of people dissing having a classic catalog as being known for old material? I have. Listen, here's my thing. People consume music very weird now. we're in this era of now. Let's dismiss everything from the past. I'm never going to be that person because honestly, I still think a lot of the music from before this current era is way better, right? And that has to do with the fact that music theory was still a thing at the time that a lot of this great music was made. We had different approaches with how people would sing songs vocally. At this point, the music industry is trying to rebuild itself, and so we're getting a very uneventful phase of music right now. There's some great acts in there, but it's just been kind of dry lately. So when folks start trying to fry up the seasoned vets and stuff, I'm like, okay, I guess. But as for me in my house, we jamming. Like, it was Shaka Khan's birthday the other day, and listen, I Feel For You is not even my favorite Shaka song, but when I say that is a song that never gets old, like when you crank it, it got a life to it, especially if you play the extended version. And if you've ever seen her do it live, a good time. When you want to talk about a song that you can just dance to, that is a classic. So I have no time for people trying to make fun of the folks who were big 20 and 30 years ago that are still holding on. I think I wrote Beyonce in the title too. Oh yeah. I know she has the project coming out this upcoming week. It's just so funny because I saw her release a statement talking about, she was at an event and didn't really get the best reception, and it kind of motivated her to go and say, I'm gonna show y'all. And the fact that everybody knew exactly what she was talking about, right? Everybody knew it was that CMA Awards performance, because please go back and watch it. By the way, that's one of my favorite performances by her, by the way. That one and that second Super Bowl, just because I'm petty, but they're two of my favorites just because they pissed off so many people. Like, it's almost hilarity to watch Beyonce and the Chicks and this massive infused band, it's the Chicks band and Beyonce's band merged together and just have this beautiful musical arrangement, this lively show, great vocals, great energy. And then you're watching half, especially the men in the crowd, just pissed off, mad as hell. And they're looking at their girlfriends because some of the girlfriends are kind of scared to clap. I was like, y'all are some hateful people. Hateful. Y'all know that performance was lit. And then for them to strip it off the website because it got so much backlash. And I'm like, y'all, Beyonce gave y'all the highest ratings y'all ever had. Beyonce and the Chicks, and y'all feel some kind of way, whatever. So I always enjoy that performance. But I'll definitely check out that album when it comes out. That'll be interesting to see. Let's see here. Let me make sure I got all my topics so we can just chop it up before I call it a night. I don't understand. Okay, I got all the big stuff. Perfect. And let me make sure. Yep. Beautiful. We can talk music and a few other things until we call it a night, until I get tired. All right. SF said the move was never going to happen. That was about the Capitals and the Wizards, right? And the thing is, like, because they were saying, well, DC, we have one of the oldest arenas, but Capital One Arena, in my opinion, is actually a really nice arena. Like, it still looks pretty good to me. They could use a paint job on the outside, but inside it's still really nice and still looks very upkept and everything. It's well put together. Now, I know they redid Madison Square Garden a few years back, but I remember when I went to Madison Square Garden for the Rock With You tour, I was so excited to go because I was like, oh, this is going to be like my experience of like when Janet had the Velvet Rope tour, and you see the shot of her jumping and the camera's behind her and you see the whole crowd. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be one of those people. And then I remember I got to Madison Square Garden. I was like, this is it? I mean, Capital One looked nicer than this. Oh, these old wood pillars at the top. It's looking like 1991 in here. Now they've redone it. It looks really nice. But yeah, so Capital One has always looked nice to me. That's when I knew it as the Verizon Center. And for those who are real DC residents, you knew it as the MCI Center. But yeah. All right. Zebra Lynn said, I always end up sticking with the historical powerhouse teams, Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, even though powerhouse teams shifted to other schools. See, this is where I messed up with my bracket, trying to follow that same thing. Kentucky messed it up for me because I had, let me see what I had initially for my bracket, right? Let me pull this up. I had Kentucky winning that game, and they lost. Who are they playing again? I was so pissed. I said, that's the first round. And I said, I'm glad I didn't bet on none of this. Kentucky, where are y'all at? Let me scroll. I had I forgot how bad they lost. I turned the game off halfway. It was stressful for me. Kentucky and Oakland lost 80-76. I had Kentucky winning because hell, and they lost. Whatever. But I still had NC State winning, so at least NC State can still shift over. All I need is, when it's all said and done, I need Gonzaga and I need UConn in the final two, and I need UConn to win. That's what I voted on, right? Anyway, I'll be blowing my phone up. Okay. Somebody said, I cannot wait. I'm an Aries. I like patience. Aries is my moon sign. That's where the violent side be coming out. When y'all see me lashing people on here, yeah, Leo is all the life of the party, but that Aries side, no, Aries my moon. Yeah, Aries got that fight in it. That Aries side come out. And then my rising is Scorpio. So all my signs are fighting each other. Man. Somebody said, I'm not doing no bracketology because I'm too stressed with sports as it is. But South Carolina, or I think it's SC's women's best win the title this year again for the third time. See, my thing with I don't watch the games like with this. I'm not that pressed, so I just made my bracket and I'll just look at the updates. I'm not about to sit and watch every game. Now, before the NFL pissed me off, I did used to really follow the Seahawks religiously, especially once they got good around about 06 when Sean Alexander was still there. And then later years with Russell Wilson before he left, like I was game after game in here cussing and. Yeah, I've made my peace. I'm not even that hooked to the games no more. Poison Ivy said, Calvin, you picked the 15,000 words on the one. No. What's funny though? Like all the notes from that Mariah thing is probably 15,000 words, but no, I did the dance right. I would have chose the dance. H. Lee said Whitney Houston is still amazing. Yeah, and I like that on Black Music Archives video that they approached it from a standpoint specifically of just technique, right? Not just how people feel about things. Because I will say a lot of the critique I think Whitney got in the end about her voice too is people who hadn't been paying attention to her for years were expecting that they were going to get 1993 vocals. And I feel like if you're somebody who was a fan and you really paid attention, you kind of saw the decline over the years. So you kind of knew certain things you weren't getting back. But there was still some elements of voice there. I still think she was exploited. She should have never went on that last tour, but that was kind of the money grab. For me, with Whitney, my favorite performance towards the end is when she does the Italy X Factor and she does $1 Million Bill. I think that's one of her best performances, just in general. She sounded really good. She looked happy. She seemed well rested. Really great performance. So when I think of those last Whitney performances, that's the one I stick with. Let's see. Somebody said, post your back catalog. What do you mean back catalog? Are you talking about like music as far as like what I listen to? Or are you talking about a back catalog of stuff on the Patreon? I'm not sure what you mean. Somebody said, I don't have facial hair, but I think using clippers or an electric razor is better than traditional razors. Stop shaving for a while. Well, no, I use clippers. I don't even own any razors. I use the clippers. I mean, and I purposely don't set the shave to be close. Like the one I have is like this, but you can push the button and it rises up. I never let it be more than like a 1.4 like centimeters away. So I never do a close shave, which is why it always looks like I'm never all the way shaved. I never shave against the skin, like too much. My face just doesn't react well to it. So I'm always going to have a little shadow of something here. Unless I finally decide to let this actually grow out and I do the David Banner look, which that could be interesting for all this. I'm trying to see how I look if all this was, but I might really start pulling them if I got that. We'll think about it. All right. Let's see. Yes, 95 had a lot of hits. A ton of them. That was just a great year. And those were just the number ones. Calvin, have you thought of doing a So What Happened on Aaliyah because it can go different ways? Excuse me. Like the blackball after age ain't nothing but a number. The change of R&B because of 1 in a Million Aaliyah, or the music coming to streaming. Well, so this is what I've decided for my own peace of mind, just so I can be a bit more consistent. I'm still going to be doing So What Happened, but I'm jumping into other music spaces. So, I have like the Music Talk series now. So that's what the next New Jack Swing episode will fall under, is Music Talk. But there's even a few other things that I want to kind of go back and do where it's more so you're revisiting the impact that some albums make, but it's just specifically on that album. So it's not one, it wouldn't be like a So What Happened where we go way back to when they had their first number 12 hit on the bubbling under charts. I'm learning to kind of let So What Happened be the big booty project as far as like the overload of information, because those So What Happened things really just, there's so much in those. those will be their own thing. But then some of the other stuff I want to jump into will be a little bit more to the point and a little bit more centered on just whatever that product is or whatever that topic is. That way, some of those can come out a little bit more frequently. Because honestly, yeah, we haven't had a So What Happened since 2022, right? So it's like, I don't want to keep stringing y'all along because there are some people who are only subscribed for So What Happened. So they've been waiting patiently and they be coming like, oh, Calvin got a video. And then they open it and it's me cussing somebody out. They're like, oh, yeah, I'll come back tomorrow. Oh, Calvin got a video. Oh, no, he cussing somebody else out. Okay. Oh, Calvin got it. Oh, no, he going off on somebody else again. So somebody said, what about Jody Watley collaborating with rap artists? Yes, it's in there. It's mentioned. We definitely talk about Friends with her and Eric B. and Rakim. So yes, I made sure everybody who was covered gets their just due. Every last person. All right. Let me see here. Yeah, A&R departments were huge back then. I don't even think they're a thing now at this point. Let me see. Yeah, that happens too, Poison Ivy. When it comes to Aaliyah, some folks just get real nasty. So, like, I get being fans of people, but I need folks to also not be like crazy. And that's why I don't really care for the whole standing thing, right? I literally just watched, and this is not to try to start nothing, but I know Meg Thee Stallion's going on tour, right? I just saw this post where, apparently the tour is doing really well, right? So I saw somebody who was so pressed that they were like, they're lying about some show she has that was sold out or something. Like they're lying about the show being sold out because, I looked at Ticketmaster and they did 2 screenshots. So they had a screenshot of like, it was section C, row 2, and the tickets were $600. And they're like, yeah, tickets were $600, but now on StubHub, they're only $200. Somebody's lying. And then when I looked at the StubHub screenshot, it was a seat that was in row 22. So I was like, yeah, a seat that's in row 22 is not going to be $600 because it's way in the back of the arena on the floor. So it's going to be a different price from the one that's in the second row. I was like, some folks have gotten so obtuse in this world of standing where it's very reactive and one-dimensional. And I'm like, if your bread and butter or your personality is built around protecting another celebrity, I need you to go outside and just breathe the air. Okay, we can like who we like, but I need y'all to like not become crazy about this. Like I have my favorites, but yeah, it's not this deep. And all of that was really in response to different fan bases that want their artist to be number one forever. I'm like, all right, my God. Okay, we need to wind this down. I need to go to bed, and I'm getting somebody's chewing me out on one of these text messages about something I done did apparently. So I'll get to that in a minute. I ain't do nothing by the way. Let me see. Benita Garner said Clive really made her go on that last tour. She wasn't ready. I just hated having to watch the backlash. That has to be hard. Like if you, and I've said this before about people who are really, really great singers. Like people like a Whitney or even Mariah, they don't have easy songs to sing. There's no song in their catalog where they can take a breather. You know what I mean? So like if you go to like a what's a good one? So like Patti LaBelle, right? Patti, a lot of her stuff is really, really hard to sing as well. But I will say like, if Patti ever needed a breather in her show, the breather is probably going to be If You Asked Me To, because it's one of the songs that's in her lower pocket. So if she's done all the big, big, big vocals and the Isn't It a Shame and the If You Only Knew and Feels Like Another One and Somebody Loves You, Baby, if she needs that 1 minute where she's like, okay, I need a song to just breathe a little bit so we can get the stamina back up to do these big numbers, she can throw in the If You Ask Me To, right? There's a part at the very end of the song where it finally does pick up, but that will probably be a song for her where she can breathe a little bit. I can't think of a Whitney song in her catalog that is for a concert setting where she could breathe. I used to think it was Run to You until I was like, are you crazy? Do you see how much happens in that song? Right? Like none of the singles from the first album are easy to sing. No, Saving All My Love for You and You Give Good Love and Greatest Love of All and How Will I Know and All at Once, those aren't easy songs. None of the singles from the second album, I Want to Dance with Somebody, So Emotional, that's a challenging one to sing. Where Do Broken Hearts Go? I'm skipping one of them. So Emotional, Where Do Broken Hearts Go? I Want to Dance with Somebody. Didn't we almost have it all? None of those are easy to sing. Same thing with the I'm Your Baby Tonight album. Like all these, she doesn't have like a song that she can kick back on. So then to go after your voice has kind of been damaged from cigarettes and everything else, and you also just haven't been performing for years, and people want that exact same experience. It sucks, right? And Whitney wasn't a lip syncer. She didn't really lip sync, right? So the mic was on. So that's tough. That's really tough. All right, we're gonna wind down. This has been good. All right, you folks. Thank y'all for hanging with me. Like I said, I'll probably, I don't know if I'm gonna still do it. I'll see. I got a lot going on this week. The book club is tomorrow. But yeah, we'll see if we have any additional content. I know that I wanted to review Shirley separately off of the live, but we'll see. I don't know if I'm gonna do it or not, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm out. Stay safe, stay sane, mind your business so that you can age well. All right, see you guys later. Good night.